In Don't Starve Together, there are a whole host of characters you can choose from. But which character should you play? That is the question I plan on answering today, whether you are a Don't Starve beginner, intermediate, or maybe even an expert. In this video, we will be reviewing every character in Don't Starve Together, their perks, their stats, what they're best at, then my opinion and rating for each character to decide which character is best for you. Also, yes, I did already make a video like this before, except that video is a year and a half old, and all the characters have now been reworked or otherwise changed. Meaning some of the information in that older video isn't accurate anymore, and so updating that information with this video. But also in this video, I'm going to be going into an insane amount of detail about each character's mechanics and the best things they can do. You might be able to tell because the video is pretty long. Also, if you didn't know, I have dedicated videos for almost every character defeating all the bosses in Don't Starve Together, so I do have some good practice with all the characters. So with the goal set, it's time to begin. Sit back, engage your brain and your ears, because it's time we start with the most recent rework. Now be warned, Wilson requires one of the most explaining out of all the characters, so if you're looking for a particular character for me to talk about, you can check the timestamps throughout the video, or you could just watch the entire video, that'd be cool as well. Wilson used to be the baseline character, as in he did not have any downside and his only perk was that he can grow a beard, but oh boy has that changed. Wilson's stats are the following: 150 health, 150 hunger, and 200 sanity, and he has a default damage multiplier, meaning he does normal damage. Otherwise, Wilson has no downsides. Since Wilson's rework, he is the only character in the game so far with a skill tree, so for every 10 days you survive as Wilson, you unlock a skill point, up to 15 of them. You can then use these points to advance through Wilson's various skill trees to make survival a little easier. So let's talk about what the skills are in his skill tree. Starting from the left side of the tree, we start with the torch section. There are 3 tiers of leveling up your torch so that it progressively burns for longer. This is most useful for a new player because you'll probably only be using torches for the first few days before you get yourself a lantern by going into the caves and grabbing yourself some light. The next branch along makes your torch brighter, which is also decent for beginners but only relevant for the first few days. Then it's basically useless since you will be using torches because you'll hopefully be using a lantern. Once you have unlocked either of the tier 3 torch skills, you can unlock the ability to throw a torch, but not only can you throw it, but when you do throw it, it lands right side up, acting as a discount lantern. Since normally if you drop a torch, it does not provide any light. So it is good for beginners, but if you want light without having to hold a torch, you can simply light a nearby tree on fire, which has a massive glow radius, so it will light up your entire screen. Although there are some biomes like rocky biomes where there are no trees to burn for light, where this perk could be useful. The next section is the alchemy section. The first branch in this section is transmuting various minerals for other kinds of minerals. So tier 1 is 3 rocks to 1 flint and 2 flint into 1 rock. Tier 2 is 3 niter into 1 gold nugget and 2 gold nuggets into 1 niter. Tier 3 is 2 cutstone into 1 marble and 1 marble into 1 cutstone. You'll notice a common occurrence with all of Wilson's transmutations, and that is if you keep transmuting between materials, the 2 materials present in the transmutation you'll eventually run out of. So you technically lose net resources when transmuting between resources. The next branch in the alchemy section is for transmuting gems. So 2 red gems make a blue gem, 2 blue gems make a red gem, and a blue and a red gem make a purple gem. Note that any character can make a purple gem with a blue and a red gem if they have access to a prestidigitator, the level 1 magic station. The tier 2 alchemy section allows you to turn 3 purple gems into 1 orange gem, 3 orange gems into 1 yellow gem, and finally the tier 3 section that allows you to turn 3 yellow gems into 1 green gem, and then 1 of each of the previously mentioned gems to make 1 iridescent gem. Wow. Gem transmutation is very useful as a surplus of any gem can be made into a different one. For example, if you have a bunch of blue and red gems from hounds during winter and summer, 9 blue and 9 red for example, you can transmute your way up to a yellow gem to make yourself like a magiluminescence to move faster, or with a construction amulet, use that yellow gem to make a starcrawler staff. Also being able to craft the iridescent gem, which you need to unlock the archives, which is one of the many tasks needed before being able to spawn and kill Celestial Champion, the moon boss, allows you to effectively speedrun Celestial Champion, as the normal way of acquiring an iridescent gem is go to the ruins, don't die, make a Starcrawler staff, find the Moonstone Forest, wait for a full moon, block off the Moonstone, plug the Starcrawler staff into the Moonstone, defend the Moonstone from hounds and weapons. Your Starcrawler staff is now a Mooncrawler staff. Go back to the ruins because you forgot to make a deconstruction staff, deconstruct the Mooncrawler staff, and bam! That is how you usually get the iridescent gem. So as you can see, I did that first take. Wow, nice. Simply crafting it is a lot faster than doing all that and such. The next branch on the alchemy section has these skills. Transform 3 twigs to a log, 1 log to 2 twigs, and then tier 1 has transform 3 morsels into into one meat. But wait, what's this? Is this one of Wilson's best perks? Transform a single meat into 2 morsels. Whoa! But Jakey, why is transforming a meat into 2 morsels so good? Well, despite the fact that if you keep crafting between meat and morsels and back to meat, you do lose net food, but every time you transmute the food, their spoilage time resets. So if you have a stack of 20 meat about to spoil, you could transmute it to a 40 stack of fresh morsels. But not only that, why not split your stack of 20 meat into 40 morsels, which you can then feed 20 of those morsels to a bird for 20 eggs, and with 20 vegetables and villas, you can make 20 pierogies, as opposed to a measly 10 pierogies if you kept your meat. You can of course do this for other food, but pierogi is just a popular crockpot food I used for this example. The tier 2 alchemy section unlocks 2 beard hair to 1 beefalo wool, and 2 beefalo wool to 1 beard hair. Tier 3 unlocks 6 rot to 1 manure. Oh, that seems familiar. 2 hound's teeth to 1 bone shard, and 2 bone shards to 1 hound's teeth. The tier 2 and 3 transmutations aren't super useful, as the materials they transmute to are easily farmable. For example, a pamphlet and a razor, and you can shave an entire herd of beefalo. Playing Wilson, you'll get lots of beard hair by shaving your beard before, during, and after summer. And manure can be farmed from werepigs pretty easily, because they produce 1 manure for every non-meat food that it eats. But the last transmutation is quite good. Bone shards were only renewable through catching fish with your preferred method, letting them rot, then hammering them, which is quite time consuming and hard to mass produce without Wickerbottom. But now Wilson can turn your probable masses of hound's teeth into lots of bone shards, which can be used to make lots of glow caps and mushlights to light up your base. The next section in Wilson's skill tree is his beard. The first branch is 3 tiers of making your beard provide more insulation, and insulation reduces the rate at which your temperature drops. This is useful in winter because you have so much insulation from your beard, plus perhaps a beefalo hat and a hibernation vest, that you won't need a thermal stone. They warm up to just after overheating 70 degrees, right as your screen is about to turn red, and you won't start freezing until 28 minutes later, which is 3.5 days, which is equivalent to about 1 temperature loss every 24 seconds. For comparison, we did a little bit of testing. So all of these test cases, they all started at 70 degrees body temperature, which, like I said, it's easy to see if you're at 70 degrees because your screen won't only be yellow, but it'll start turning red as you take damage from being too hot. A character with no insulation or thermal stone will lose 1 temperature per 1 second, so 70 seconds until you begin to freeze. A 70-degree thermal stone will keep its heat above 0 for 5 minutes and 50 seconds, which is less than 1 in-game day. A Wilson with a level 3 beard, no insulation perks, will lose 1 temperature every 4.5 seconds, so it takes about 5 minutes and 15 seconds to start freezing. A Wilson with a level 3 beard and tier 3 insulation perk loses 1 temperature every 9 seconds, so about 10 minutes and 30 seconds before they freeze. And like we said before, a Wilson with a level 3 beard, tier 3 insulation perk, beefalo hat and hibernation vest will lose 1 temperature every 24 seconds, which is basically max insulation, and it will take 28 minutes to start freezing. Cool, enough about temperature. The other branch is simply your beard grows faster, which might sound useful, but the only time you really want a beard over the year is during winter, and you only shave your beard during and after summer. Without a tier 3 beard speed growing upgrade, your beard takes 16 full days to grow from nothing to a level 3 beard, which leaves plenty of time from the start of autumn to the start of winter to grow your beard for use during winter before shaving it before summer starts. So this perk is not super useful in my opinion. After unlocking either of the tier 3 beard skills, you can unlock the beard storage skill, which allows you to store 1, 2, or 3 stacks of food inside Wilson's beard depending on how fully grown it is. Food stored in Wilson's beard doesn't spoil any faster or slower than if it was in your inventory. Now the final section is called Affinity. This is where you choose to side with the shadows or the moon, but you can only decide with one of them at any one time. Also, to partially unlock both affinities, you first have to spend 12 skill tree points. If you choose to side with the shadows, you will need to defeat Ancient Fuelweaver, and then you can unlock the shadow affinity to gain these abilities. 10% extra damage versus lunar aligned mobs, such as Celestial Champion. 10% less damage taken from shadow mobs, such as shadow creatures. Transmute 1 dreadstone to 2 pure horror, transmute 3 pure horror to 1 dreadstone, and transmute 1 pure horror to 2 nightmare fuel. Interestingly enough, during testing in PvP, you'll take less damage from Walter's shadow tentacles that spawn from his cursed rounds, but we'll talk more about Walter in his section. If you choose to side with the moon, you will need to defeat Celestial Champion, and then you are granted these abilities. 10% extra damage versus shadow aligned mobs, such as Ancient Fuelweaver and nightmare creatures. 10% less damage taken from lunar mobs, and the ability to transmute 3 infused moon shards to 1 pure brilliance, and the ability to transmute 1 pure brilliance to 2 infused moon shards. So of course, extra damage is always good, especially since it counts towards shadow creatures, which you'll probably be commonly fighting. While also, you will need pure brilliance to craft any of the equipment from the Bright Smithy, which is a crafting station that you can craft armor and such with the resources we're about to talk about. You can normally only acquire pure brilliance at a slow rate, as the portal that generates pure brilliance spawns after defeating Celestial Champion and giving Wagstaff the shard that Celestial Champion drops. This portal portal can spawn anywhere in the world, typically away from your structures, and will slowly spawn these rocks, which can be mined for pure brilliance, and they only spawn at a certain rate. So being able to transmute into pure brilliance allows you to farm them faster without using deconstruction staffs and construction amulets. So Shadow versus the Moon affinity, I would probably choose the Lunar affinity, simply because the transmutations are potentially more useful than the Shadow transmutations, and the 10% extra damage versus Shadow creatures would be used a lot more than 10% more damage versus Lunar mobs, but the affinity is up to you as they're both good. And this is what I would spend my skill tree points on in Wilson's skill tree, as long as you're comfortable with getting a lantern in the first 5 days or so. If you are like a very early beginner and you really want your torches to be better, then perhaps spend your skill tree points like this. You get one or both of the tier 3 torch upgrades along with the ability to throw a torch, which sacrifices some of the alchemy upgrades, but you probably wouldn't have used them anyway. I would still recommend the Lunar affinity, as Celestial Champion people usually have an easier time killing than Ancient Fuel Weaver, and the damage against Shadow creatures will probably be more useful. Wilson's favorite food is bacon and eggs. Let me just explain what a favorite food is. Each character has a favorite food. All that means is the character gains 15 extra flat hunger from eating their favorite food. Sometimes their favorite food isn't worth making, but I will note when it is worth making, bacon and eggs are decent, so make them if you're packing lots of meat with no veg. Now I will rate every character on 4 metrics: survivability, utility, combat, and difficulty. I have rated characters in the past, but this time I spent over 10 hours discussing with my Twitch chat about ratings for every character, and later we will see the very cool cluster chart I made to directly compare all the characters. So the definition for survivability is how easy is it to survive as the character with their perks and disadvantages. Utility's definition is how many resources, buffs, or advantages can that team member generate for the team, whether you're playing solo or with multiple people. And combat is a combination of damage output and other perks beneficial to combat which aren't already accounted for by survivability or utility. And then the difficulty rating: how hard is the character to play? A higher rating means harder, a lower rating means easier. All the ratings are from 1 to 10, 10 being the best possible with a single character, and 1 being the worst possible with a single character, and 5 being nothing special but nothing terrible either. So with that in mind, Wilson's ratings are as follows. Wilson. Wilson, it's me, Banjo the business pig, and I have something to ask you. How do you shave your beard to look so luscious and manly? Oh, well, I go to the crafting tab and build myself a razor.
No, wait, a razor from Manscaped?
No way, Wilson uses Manscaped, the premium brand for men's grooming and hygiene. I bet Wilson got given their all-in-one perfect package 4.0, which includes tools and liquid formulations for your body, butt, and balls. Wilson, you used this, right? The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer? No. Sure you did. Look how smoothly it goes over this don't start to get the player's face, almost as smooth as their brain. Wow, it's even waterproof so you can trim in the rain during spring. Wow, that's insane, Wilson. No wonder you clicked the link in the description and used the code for 20% off on your Manscaped order, plus getting 2 free gifts. The travel bag for when I must travel far and wide to visit my wife and children, along with the Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs. But for real, they included this line in the brief, and it's the most amazing line I've ever seen in a brief before. Manscaped. The perfect tools for your family jewels. Epic. Thanks for sponsoring the video, Manscaped. Very cool. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Wilson's ratings, yep. Survivability, 5.5 out of 10. The beard helps in winter and has extra inventory slots, pretty useful. Utility, 6 out of 10. Being able to transmute between materials can be useful, but most notably meat morsels. Combat, 5.5 out of 10. It would be a 5 out of 10, but with his final affinity perk, he gains 10% more damage against some creatures. And difficulty, 4 out of 10. He has perks to assist in survival, but you'll still need to know fundamental game mechanics to survive. A very nice starting character which will teach you the game very well and with good habits and good progression. I'd recommend Wilson for beginners and intermediates, or of course if you just enjoy playing him. Willow is a pyromaniac who starts with a lighter and a little teddy bear called Bernie, who looks rather innocent, but when Willow becomes insane, whoa, Bernie becomes Big Bernie, and he has 2,000 health, does 50 damage per hit, and will taunt everything which is nearby, meaning they will always prioritize attacking Bernie if they're close enough rather than Willow, except bosses. Some bosses like Deerclops, after getting hit by Bernie, will actually turn around and hit Bernie, but then there are bosses like Dragonfly who prioritize hitting actual players, and so basically never hits Bernie. When being attacked, Bernie receives just as much damage from enemies as players do, and when Bernie eventually runs out of health, he will crumble to the floor and revert back to small Bernie, but instead of alive and well, he will be used, beaten, and broken. But you you can fix him simply by picking broke Bernie up and use one use of a sewing kit or one Winona's tape, which will fix him back to 100% ready for another round of pain. Willow's lighter is like a torch but with a lot more durability, but not nearly as bright with its very small light radius, and once it reaches 0% durability, you must craft a new one if you want another lighter, as it cannot be refueled. You can also cook on the lighter with a cost of 1% durability for each item that you cook. Speaking of cooking, Willow also cooks things on her lighter and fires significantly faster than other characters, taking half a second rather than 1 full second. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into Bernie's mechanics, because he becomes a little more complicated when there are multiple insane Willows or other insane characters who aren't Willow. So, the requirements for Bernie to transform into Big Bernie, which can attack enemies, is that an insane Willow must be nearby, a maximum of 2 tile radius away. But if there is one insane Willow, but that Willow already has a Big Bernie defending her, then the other Bernie won't transform into a Big Bernie. This restriction is easy to remember, only one insane Willow can have one Big Bernie defending her at a time. Now when there are multiple Willows, they can accidentally steal each other's Bernie, as Bernie is not loyal to one Willow. Now if the Big Bernie dies, the small Bernie will immediately transform into Big Bernie. It's also worth noting as well, small Bernie only has 1000 health, but when transforming between small to Big Bernie, Bernie keeps a proportional amount of health relative to the current form's maximum. So if small Bernie has a 500 out of 1000 health left, then transforms to Big Bernie, that Big Bernie will then have 1000 out of 2000 health. Also, I thought something someone said in my Twitch chat while we were testing this was quite funny. When Bernie doesn't transform, but he is taunting enemies, he does the tiny Bernie tippy taps. Thank you, kind Twitch chatter. Otherwise, Willow has 150 health, 150 hunger, and 120 sanity. She gains sanity for each fire source that she is close to. This sanity gain is about 1 sanity every 10 seconds for each fire source, so a stack of 10 grass set on fire near Willow will give her 1 sanity per second. And if you couldn't tell, Willow is immune to fire damage, so stand as close as you want to that burning tree to warm you up during winter. Willow gains a small amount of sanity when she equips a torch or her lighter. There seems to be a limit of how often you gain this +1 sanity when you equip a torch or a lighter. Willow is slightly more resistant to overheating, but not enough to not need summer protection. You will still need to protect against summer heat like a thermal stone or umbrella or some other method. She gains 10% more sanity from most auras, such as Glommer. Willow's favorite food is spicy chili, fitting as it raises your temperature a little bit, but not worth making. Willow is more susceptible to freezing in that insulation clothing is less effective on her, so she loses temperature a little faster with winter clothing on than another character like Wendy with the same winter clothing. This can be mitigated by using a thermal stone, as a thermal stone's temperature isn't directly affected by your insulation or lack thereof. She also becomes frozen more easily. For example, Wilson takes 2 ice hounds dying near him in quick succession to freeze, whereas Willow will still need 2 ice hounds, but as you can see, she thaws slower, so an ice hound killed the same length apart as a Wilson will freeze the Willow and not the Wilson. On to Willow's ratings. Her survivability is going to be a 5.5 out of 10, her utility a 5 out of 10, her combat a 5.5 out of 10, and her difficulty a 3.5 out of 10. Willow's ability to distract mobs is decent for her team and good in solo if you struggle with nightmare creatures, as Bernie can taunt them, but if Bernie kills a nightmare creature, you don't gain the sanity back when he kills it, so you do have to actually kill the shadow creatures yourself. Willow being a little bit of a pain to keep warm in winter isn't that big of a deal. Same goes for summer. Her summer resistance isn't enough to ignore summer heat. I would recommend Willow for a beginner who particularly struggles against nightmare creatures and is always forgetting to make a light source. Wolfgang is one of my favorite characters, as his upside is one of the most powerful in the game, which is a simple yet effective deal double damage when he's in his mighty form. But how do you unlock Wolfgang's double damage? Well, Wolfgang has a mighty meter which increases when lifting any of his dumbbells and doing work like chopping, mining, and while fighting. Wolfgang becomes mighty when his meter goes above 75 mightiness, at which point Wolfgang gets a flat 2.0 times damage multiplier, meaning double damage, and he works more efficiently in that he will do work in less actions. This isn't just limited to working like chopping and mining, but also things like rowing your boat, allowing you to row a little faster than using regular characters. Wolfgang starts with a dumbbell made of rock. This is fine to use until you manage to find yourself some marble to make yourself a marbell. a dumbbell made of marble. In fact, in my speed runs, I always use a marbell. I never make the gold dumbbell because the marbell is better, nor do I ever make the gem dumbbell because it's too expensive. Anyway, enough about dumbbells. Okay, one last thing. If you're mighty, you can also throw them, which looks really funny, but it isn't very practical and costs a lot of durability on your dumbbell. But hey, you can aggro things from afar, and I guess, and you can kill birds. When Wolfgang's mighty meter drops to or below 75 mightiness, he becomes normal, which means he has a normal damage multiplier, and he will work at the same rate as a normal character. But if his mightiness drops to or below 25, he becomes wimpy. At this point, he gains a 0.75 times damage multiplier, so you're just as weak as Wes, who we will get to later. He will also have the opposite effect of being mighty when working, so when Wimpy Wolfgang works, he takes more actions to do the task compared to regular Wolfgang. When not lifting, fighting, or working, Wolfgang's mightiness drains slowly and drains faster the lower his hunger is, with a minimum drain of 48 mightiness per day at full hunger, and a maximum drain of 768 mightiness per day, but that's only if you're starving. Practically what this means is you should try to keep your hunger between 100 to 150 or up to 200, which will only have you lose 96 to 48 mightiness per day. The higher level dumbbell you use also increases his mightiness, but in game you'll find that you'll probably be staying mighty by doing work like mining, chopping, rowing, and fighting, while mighty Wolfgang has a very small chance of finishing a task in one hit. For example, breaking a boulder with one swing of a pickaxe. Unfortunately, this low chance to one hit something doesn't apply in combat, so you won't be one hitting Dragonfly anytime soon. Also, moving around while holding any dumbbell stops mightiness from draining entirely, so in the early game, it's useful to wear the dumbbell when you don't have a walking cane or anything better to wear. Note though that if you're standing still and holding a dumbbell, your mightiness will still drain like normal. Mightiness also goes up very fast when lifting using Wolfgang's own character specific crafted mighty gym. To gain mightiness the fastest from the mighty gym, you must put 2 boss statues on the gym crafted on a potter's wheel after defeating a boss and giving the figure sketch to the potter's wheel. After which you hop onto the mighty gym and click the gym when the indicator hovers over the gold section of the indication bar to gain a big chunk of mightiness. Wolfgang automatically gets off the mighty gym when his mightiness is full. I personally don't recommend the mighty gym as the marble dumbbell is plenty good enough, cheap and mobile. Wolfgang suffers 10% extra sanity drain from all sources. This is kind of a good thing if you like nightmare fuel, but if you don't, it's not a big deal because you deal double the damage, so you kill the nightmare creatures a lot faster. Wolfgang's favorite food is cooked potato, which is easy to mass produce and it heals for 20 health, with an initial low hunger value of 25, increasing to 40 due to it being his favorite. Quite a good food to make. Wolfgang has the highest DPS potential in the game, and with just himself and a dark sword, he can do a DPS of 272, with Wanda being a close second, though we'll talk more about this in Wally and Wanda's section. Wolfgang, while mighty, has a higher cold resistance, but at the cost of the equivalent negative heat resistance, though it isn't enough to ignore winter cold, and the negative summer insulation isn't that noticeable. Wolfgang, when mighty, can also carry heavy objects with no speed penalty, like the shadow pieces, the lunar altars, all of which give him the goofiest walking animation, I think. Wolfgang also does not suffer speed penalties from heavy items such as piggybacks and marble suits, meaning you can use them without their intended downside of reducing your speed. So you'll almost definitely be using a piggyback while playing Wolfgang until you get yourself a Krampus sack. Wolfgang has 200 in all stats, health, hunger, and sanity, and it is time for his ratings. Wolfgang's survivability is going to be a 7.5, his utility a 6, his combat a 10, and his difficulty a 4. Wolfgang has the highest DPS potential, and even then, just by himself, he is one of the highest DPS characters in the game, therefore his combat is 10 out of 10. Quick note about DPS in this game. Characters with normal weapons like a dark sword attack at an attack rate of 2 times per second. A default damage character with a dark sword has a DPS of 136. And also, just for fun, and a teaser for later, this is the highest possible damage you can achieve in the game with all buffs. That's 600 damage per blow dart, 2 blow darts per second, 1200 damage per second. We'll get to how we achieve this level of DPS later in Wally's section. Wolfgang can provide a small amount of utility as he mines and chops faster at the cost of the tool breaking faster, but the tool itself will do as much work as if it was used by Wilson or Mighty Wolfgang, just Wolfgang does it in less actions. Wolfgang's survivability is a 7.5 out of 10, as if there's a problem, he could simply kill it. Also, he has higher stats than most, but if you're caught in a situation where you're not mighty, it might be rough, partially due to his unskippable animation between going in and out of mightiness, which can and probably will get you hit. And since his rework and changes, his passive extra hunger drain was removed unless he's wimpy, in which case he drains at 0.75 times, so less hunger rate than normal. But remember, if you need to become mighty while in combat, you can fight with your dumbbell to gain mightiness even faster than if you just hit an enemy with a normal weapon. And with double damage, he's one of the most powerful characters in the game, and my go-to choice when speedrunning all the bosses, which I'll be doing again soon. Great character, very powerful. Wendy and Abigail, except I don't see Abigail. That's because Wendy keeps Abigail inside of her Pokeball. Right-clicking Abigail's flower will summon Abigail into the world. And also, if it wasn't clear, Abigail died. I don't know how. Unlucky, oops. Anyway, by default, Wendy does 0.75 times damage just by herself, and she has 0.75 times sanity drain, so she loses sanity slower from all sources, and does 150 health, hunger, and 200 sanity. Now let's talk about Abigail. Abigail can be summoned from the flower that Wendy starts with, and her maximum health is between 150 and 600, depending on what level she is. She starts at level 1, and levels up to level 2 after 8 minutes, which is one whole don't starve day. Level 2 grants her more health, being 300, and 8 minutes or one whole day later again, she will become level 3, obtaining her maximum HP of 600. Her level does not affect her damage, but what does affect her damage is what time of day it is. If it's daytime, Abigail does 15 damage. If it's dusk, Abigail does 25 damage, and during the night, Abigail does 40 damage. And also, if Abigail is in the caves, it always counts as nighttime, so she will always be doing the 40 damage. But did I forget to mention that Abigail's damage is area of effect with a radius of about 1 tile, and she attacks once per second. Area of effect damage is pretty rare in Don't Starve, so this is one of the rare sources, and it's a good one. Whenever Abigail takes damage by getting hit by an enemy, she generates an invincibility shield for half a second, and yes, I counted the frames, it's half a second. This means she can't be stun locked, and it negates most damage when she's being attacked by multiple enemies, like a horde of spiders. You can even hear when enemies hit her shield. Abigail starts in passive mode, meaning she'll only attack things that are attacking Wendy, and Abigail will stay close to Wendy. But by riling up Abigail by right-clicking her flower, she will enter kill mode, where she will attack anything that gets too close and will roam around Wendy searching for things to attack. Good for preemptively defending you from enemies like hound waves. When Abigail hits an enemy, she vexes them, increasing the damage they take by 10% from all sources. Along with that, Wendy characters also deal 40% extra damage against enemies that have been vexed. So the way this is calculated is Wendy's 0.75 times damage multiplier is multiplied by 1.4 for the 40%, which makes Wendy's personal damage 1.05 times that of a default damage character, but since enemies also receive 10% more damage because they were vexed again, Wendy, when attacking with Abigail, has an effective damage multiplier of 1.155 times, plus Abigail's damage on top of that. So as an example, Wendy, with a dark sword, attacking with Abigail at nighttime gives them a total DPS of just over 197. Abigail also counts as a source of light to protect you from Charlie if you stay close. Wendy can craft a structure called a cistern, then can put 4 petals inside of it, which restores plus 25 sanity per minute when standing close by, and it levels up Abigail 4 times faster than normal. This isn't too useful, there are better ways to get sanity back faster, and Abigail already levels up pretty fast, but since if she dies, her level resets to 1, and if your Abigail is dying a lot, then I guess a cistern might be a little useful for getting her back to full strength a little faster. Wendy can make potions for Abigail that buff her in various ways. To craft these potions, you will need various ingredients depending on the potion, but all of the potions share one common ingredient, that being Morning Glory. Did I say that right? You can get this material by visiting graves in the world where there is a 5% chance that a pip spook will spawn, and this chance increases by 5% for every additional Wendy in the server. I'd recommend searching in the Mosaic biome because there's always a bunch of gravestones close by there. After right-clicking on the pip spook, it will put you in the direction of its lost toy. The closer you get to the toy, the bigger and quicker the ring around the pip spook's head will pop pulse, until you get close enough so the toy becomes visible. Upon the Pipspook picking up the toy, the Pipspook is so hard to say, the Pipspook will drop an amount of morning glory. You can help one Pipspook find multiple toys until you find its final toy, at which point the Pipspook will despawn and drop the majority of the morning glories as your reward. That's too many Pipspook. I kept messing up saying Pipspook. I hear the potions themselves can only be applied one at a time, so applying one on top of another one will stop the previous potion's effect. Revenant Restorative makes Abigail regenerate health 3 times faster than normal, from 1 health per second to 3 for 16 minutes or 2 days, for a total healing potential of up to 960. Spectral Cure All, effectively an upgraded version of Revenant Restorative. It rapidly regenerates Abigail's health by 600 over 30 seconds, so much faster. Unyielding Draught. This potion extends Abigail's already existing shield to last for 1 second after taking damage from a hit, rather than the default 0.5 seconds. This potion lasts for 8 minutes or 1 in-game day. Distilled Vengeance. This potion extends Abigail's shield like before to 1 second, except any mob that attacks and hits the shield will take 20 damage back. This potion also lasts for 8 minutes. Nightshade Nostrum. This potion grants Abigail nighttime damage, no matter the time of day, for 8 minutes. Vigor Mortis. This increases Abigail's speed by 75% for 8 minutes. This is useful for very specific situations, like chasing down mobs or pulling Abigail away from attacks like during the Toadstool fight. Also, if you're dead, you can haunt this potion on the floor to get the same speed bonus for a few seconds. Wow, cool. In typical gameplay, you'll be mostly using Nightshade Nostrum before a boss fight and have a Spectral Cure All in case Abigail takes too much damage, while occasionally using a shield potion as it effectively doubles her damage mitigation. As a reference, a level 3 Abigail can kill 100 Spelunkies without a shield before dying, but can kill double that with a shield buff. Wendy offers a very rare and cheap source of area of effect damage in Don't Starve Together, which allows massive crowd control versus hoarding mobs like monkeys, spiders, and other small mobs, which other characters would struggle with. Typically, bosses will target the player over Abigail, but if you're out of range or the boss does area of effect damage, Abigail dies fast against those bosses without a strategy to help Abigail dodge the boss. This is because Abigail counts as an NPC and therefore receives NPC damage from other NPCs, such as a Clockwork Rook hits Abigail for up to 200 health, whereas it only hits the player for 45. Wendy won't receive damage bonuses versus nightmare creatures, so shadow creatures are a pain to deal with as you deal 0.75 times damage to them, but Wendy's 0.75 times sanity drain modifier means she loses sanity slower than most. Wendy's favorite food is banana pop, which gives 33 sanity, 20 health, along with a boosted hunger of 27.5. Pretty decent if you've got a lot of spare bananas. Now it's time for Wendy's ratings. Her survivability is going to be a 7, her utility a 6.5, her combat a 6.5, and her difficulty a 3. Abigail serves as your personal bodyguard and she'll die for you before you die, probably. Abigail's area of effect damage can mean some bosses just can get stepped on by Wendy, such as Bee Queen. Although bosses like the Twins of Terror will put Abigail back in the ground faster than you can put her back in a Pokeball. Speaking of which, to put Abigail away because she's in danger or she's being too slow, or whatever reason, simply use the flower on Abigail. This can be used for some trickery like I used in my Wendy all boss run, having a mob target Abigail, then recalling Abigail by attacking her with an ice staff. This causes the mob to target Abigail, but then Abigail's recalled back to her flower, so the mob doesn't hit anything. Wendy and Abigail's total damage per second combined is effective to a 1.45 times damage multiplier, with a portion of that damage being AoE, meaning higher DPS than a character like Wigfrid, but not as high as Wolfgang. Great for beginners, as you will never be alone, until Abigail dies again. WX starts with a low 125 health, hunger, and 150 sanity, lower than most. They also start with a circuit extractor and a bio-scanalyzer. We'll get to what those do later. WX also has a charge meter and gains 1 charge on their charge meter every 90 seconds if you're not wet or starving. But how do you utilize this charge meter? Well, WX can unlock craft and plug in 50 15 different circuits which give WX various buffs and abilities, and we will go through all 15 of them. Unfortunately, you cannot plug in all of the circuits all at once, since once you are fully charged, you have 6 circuit slots. Some circuits take 1 slot, some take up to all 6 slots, so you must choose wisely. Each circuit must be unlocked by scanning a mob in the game. To scan a mob, you must deploy your bioscanalizer, or Jimmy, that's its name, and it will bleep bloop its way over to a mob that can be scanned. Then you must stay within Jimmy's green circle, otherwise the scan fails. And then once Jimmy has been scanning long enough, it will return to you, and upon picking up Jimmy, you will unlock the circuit depending on the mob that you scanned, while also gaining some biodata. Biodata is used to craft these circuits, and when you scan a mob, the amount of biodata it gives you is usually enough to craft the circuit you would unlock by scanning that same mob. Also, scanning bosses that can be scanned usually give lots more biodata than mobs that aren't as dangerous. But there is a cooldown on scanning the same mob twice for biodata, so you can't just infinitely scan a moleworm for unlimited biodata. Waiting for 8 minutes before scanning the same thing again will grant you the full amount of biodata that the scan can give. Otherwise, there is a minimum cooldown for every mob, which seems to be anywhere between 30 seconds and a few minutes. It seems to be different for each mob. Scanning before this 8-minute cooldown will result in a proportional biodata return based on how long ago you scanned that mob. So basically just wait 8 minutes before scanning the mob again. Now we know how to unlock the circuits, let's go through all of them. What you need to scan, what they do, and how to craft them, and my opinion on them. Hardy circuit. Increases your maximum health by 50, fills 1 circuit slot, unlocked by scanning a spider. And to craft requires 2 biodata and 1 spider gland. This circuit can be cheap to fill a slot if you have 1 spare and you want the extra health, but I'd rather save the slot for another circuit. Super hardy circuit. This circuit increases your maximum health by 150 while taking up to 2 slots, and is unlocked by scanning a nurse spider, which is spawned by spider queens. It requires 4 biodata, 2 spider glands, and a hardy circuit, the previous circuit, to craft. Same opinion as the hardy circuit. If you want more health, it's good, but I wouldn't use it. Processing circuit. Increases your maximum sanity by 40 and fills 1 circuit slot. Unlocked by scanning butterflies and moon moths on Lunar Island, and requires 1 biodata and 1 petal to craft, so not too good. Super processing unit. Increases your max sanity for 100 while also providing +2 sanity regeneration per minute, or 16 sanity per day. Fills 2 circuit slots and is unlocked by scanning any of the 3 shadow creatures, Crawling Horror, the Terrorbeak, or the Terror Claw. You can even scan the ruins generated shadow creatures for this circuit. It requires 3 biodata, 1 nightmare fuel, and 1 processing circuit to craft. This circuit is decent because, you know, sanity regeneration, if you don't like being insane, is good. The average autumn and evening night will make you lose about 20 sanity, while the circuit generates 16 sanity, so after 1 whole average autumn day, you will net -4 sanity per day, but without the circuit, you would have lost 20 sanity. Gastro Gain circuit. Increases max hunger by 40, fills 1 slot, unlocked by scanning normal hounds. Requires 2 biodata and 1 hound tooth to craft. Increases your max hunger, isn't very useful. Super Gastro Gain circuit. Plus 100 maximum hunger and 20% less hunger drain, and fills 2 circuit slots. Unlocked by scanning Slurper, found in the entrance of the ruins, and Bearager, the autumn boss. Requires 3 biodata, 1 Slurper pelt, and 1 Gastro Gain circuit to craft. Contrary to the name, starving probably won't be the thing that kills you and don't starve, so not too useful. Though an interesting note is that if you plug in 3 of these circuits, you won't need to eat for about 11 days. Chorus Box circuit. Gain a +5 sanity aura per minute around you for you and your team. Also plays music to make sure that you go insane in real life while also tending to plants in game. Fills 3 circuit slots and is unlocked by scanning Crab King or the Crabby Hermit. Requires 4 biodata and 1 baritone shell bell, which is this shell, this one right here. A sanity aura is decent for you and your teammates if you really don't like going insane. This sanity aura is enough to not lose sanity from the passive sanity aura from evening and night. The last few circuits have not been too good, but don't worry, we're about to get to the good circuits. Bean Booster circuit. Regenerates 5 health every 30 seconds, increases max sanity by 100, and you gain 2 sanity regeneration per minute. Fills 3 circuit slots, unlocked by scanning the big bad Bee Queen boss. Requires 8 biodata and 1 royal jelly and 1 super processing unit to craft. You may think scanning Bee Queen is tough, but 2 uses of a pamphlet and Jimmy will have enough time to scan her, and you can escape unscathed. The royal jelly in the crafting ingredients means you must kill Bee Queen or get lucky with a claws present. Either way, this circuit is decent for passively regenerating your stats, which is a very rare and powerful survival mechanic in Don't Starve. Acceleration circuit. Plus 25% movement 100% speed, fills up all 6 circuits. Unlocked by scanning a rabbit, requires 2 biodata and 1 rabbit to craft. Taking up all 6 slots is an oof, especially since when you unplug the circuit, it removes the number of charges that the circuit needed. This circuit can be obtained easily on day 1 for an easy speed bonus. Typically, bunnies run away from you if you get too close, so scanning them can be a pain. So try to stay far away from the bunny while still staying within Jimmy's circle. After a bit of chasing, you'll eventually scan the bunny. It's worth noting, if the mob runs out of Jimmy's range, the scan will be paused, not cancelled, so your progress is saved. The thing which resets your progress is if you, WX, leave Jimmy's circle. Super acceleration circuit. One circuit gives 25% speed bonus and takes up only 2 circuit slots. Equipping 2 of these gives 40%, and filling up all of your circuit slots with 3 of these will grant you 50% speed bonus. Unlocked by scanning Clockwork Rooks, broken Clockwork Rooks in the ruins, and the Ancient Guardian in the labyrinth. Requires 6 biodata, 1 gear, and 1 acceleration circuit to craft each of them. This is one of the most powerful circuits in WX78's arsenal. Speed bonus can simply trivialize most boss fights, so if you get lucky and find a rook on the surface world, you can scan it, and after amassing enough biodata and gears, you can craft 3 of these circuits in the first few days for an insane 50% speed bonus. And if you have no rook on the surface, you can simply rush the ruins where there will definitely be a broken Clockwork Rook for you to scan. But if you can't find them, you can always scan Ancient Guardian, but be aware, scanning Ancient Guardian is kinda hard because you gotta stay close to him for long, so bring a pamphlet or some armor and healing. Most circuits stack without diminishing returns, but as you can see, the more speed circuits you equip, the less speed they give individually. So you might find one circuit giving you 25% speed bonus is enough for you so that you can pair it with one of the circuits coming up. The optoelectronic circuit allows you to see in the dark exactly like muggles. They automatically activate during nighttime and the dark like in the caves. Fills up 4 circuit slots, unlocked by scanning a moleworm, requires 4 biodata, a moleworm, and 1 firefly to craft. This circuit, granting infinite night vision as long as you don't lose charges, is insanely helpful for new players and not as experienced players, as something like a lantern doesn't allow you to see very far in the dark, but now you can see everything while also freeing up your armor and weapon slots for whatever you want to wear. Tip for scanning a moleworm: you can drop a mineral like a flint, wait for the moleworm to approach and pop out the ground, then as it begins sniffing your rock, pick it up so he doesn't steal it, then after he digs back underground, simply drop your rock again. This keeps the moleworm above ground so Jimmy can keep scanning it. Illumination circuit: you glow with light, similar to a default torch radius. Fills 3 circuit slots, unlocked by scanning a depth worm in the caves, or a light bug in the lunar grotto biome, or a skitter squid found in the ocean, sometimes near the shores. Requires 6 biodata and 1 light bulb to craft. You might think, why would I make this circuit when I can just have the Moggle night vision circuit? Well, this one takes up 1 less circuit slot, and it keeps your friends safe from darkness. Whereas with the Moggle circuit, you will simply watch from the comfort of your Moggles as your friends are slain by Charlie. Wish that were me. What? Playing solo, I'd rather use the Moggle circuit. Even if I was playing with others, I'd still probably just use the Moggle circuit. Thermal circuit gives you a heat radius of plus 25, increases your minimum temperature by 20, anything that spoils will spoil 25% faster in your inventory, and you dry off 10% faster. Fills 3 circuit slots and is unlocked by scanning Firehounds or Dragonfly. Requires 4 biodata and a red gem to craft. Giving you a heat radius means you can keep your friends slightly warm in winter, but it really isn't effective in testing, and your teammates will have to snuggle up real close to you to get warm. Increasing your minimum temperature by 20 means that the default minimum temperature of minus 20 is changed to 0, so you cannot take ambient freezing damage during winter, although your screen will almost always be frozen as you are sitting just above freezing. Food spoiling faster in your inventory is not good, but you can simply just store your food in your backpack, that way it doesn't get affected by the accelerated spoiler trait. Refrigeration circuit gives you plus 25 cold radius, decreases your maximum temperature by 20, things that spoil will spoil 25% slower in your inventory, and this also excludes your backpack like the other circuit. And upon reaching 95 wetness, the wetness turns into 2 ice on the floor and resets your wetness to 0. Fills up 3 circuits and is unlocked by scanning Icehound and Deerclops. Requires 4 biodata and 1 blue gem to craft. The maximum temperature decrease means you are safe from ambient overheating in summer. After testing, regardless whether you have any charges left or not, the ice circuit will still turn your 95 wetness into 2 ice cubes, even if the circuit's charges it's connected to have been deactivated. Interesting. And also after testing, despite being wet causing you to take damage, on average you'll get struck by lightning enough to heal any damage you will be taking from the wetness damage, so long as WX is taking the lightning bolts and not a lightning rod. Then you can probably survive spraying purely with this circuit, but I wouldn't rely on it though. Sudden changes in wetness on the other hand, this circuit could negate, such as your boat succumbing to a rock causing you to drown, or a teammate griefing you with water balloons. Lastly, electrification circuit. Anything that hits you takes 20 base electric damage back, capped at only dealing damage once every 0.3 seconds. Also grants advanced lightning insulation, fills 2 circuit slots, unlocked by scanning a Vault Goat, requires 5 biodata and 1 electric goat milk to craft. This circuit delivering electric damage complicates the damage it actually deals, as electric damage deals 1.5 times damage by default against non-wet targets, but against wet targets deals 2.5 times damage. So if a dry pigman poked you, he would receive 30 damage back, 20 multiplied by 1.5. If the same pigman but wet poked you, he would instead receive 50 damage back, 20 multiplied by 2.5. You probably shouldn't plan to get hit while fighting bosses, so this circuit is more of a gimmick than, actually practical. But despite that, me and my Twitch chat did this where we killed all the bosses or most of them only using these circuits and other types of thorn damage, and the video is linked in the card in the top right in the description. It's very stupid and impractical, but funny. And that's all the circuits. WX78 has a few other perks, being they can eat gears to restore 60 sanity, 75 hunger, and 50 health. Eating gears used to buff your maximum stats, but that doesn't happen anymore since WX78's rework. WX has half the aggro range for clockworks and broken clockworks because they are also machines, and I guess they need WX to be closer to them before they realize WX is not a friendly clockwork comrade. This means in the ruins you can mine statues and hammer broken clockworks without engaging in combat most of the time, since you must be a lot closer than other characters for clockworks to aggro onto you. The best circuit combinations are completely up to your personal preference, but my personal favorite combinations are triple speed for maximum speed running, single speed with single moggle, single speed with single heat or cold depending on the season, and single speed with a B Queen circuit for the ultra passive playstyle. To take circuits out, you need to use the circuit extractor, which will always take the circuit out at the top of the circuit meter first, which then causes the circuit itself to lose durability. And when plugging a circuit in, it will always go to the lowest point available first. So it'd be best to keep circuits you plan on taking in and out at the top, such as heat and cold circuits, while keeping others like speed circuits at the bottom. If all your circuits are active and you are frozen by something like ice hounds, you will instantly lose 2 charges on your charge meter, which disables any circuits connected to those 2 charge slots. WX also loses a charge slot every 5 seconds when above 15 wetness, while wet WX also takes rain damage between 3 and 9 depending on the wetness. WX can also gain a circuit charge by doing the following: touching a lightning rod that is glowing from being struck by lightning, being struck by lightning themselves, eating electric goat milk or Vault Goat Chow Freud, which we will talk about later, or from touching either of Winona's generators while they are charged. WX's favorite food is a butter muffin. You get it? Butter muffins are an early game food for healing, not too useful as for hunger, not really worth making after the early game. WX's ratings depend on the circuits that you use, but I'll try to give a general average. Survivability 7 out of 10. With WX's speed, night vision, cold and heat immunity, it makes it pretty hard to kill WX unless you do something catastrophically wrong, like forget to get rain protection. WX also gains full nutrition from food regardless if it's stale or spoiled, so this helps slightly with survivability. Utility is going to be a 6. Some circuits can help your teammates by keeping them warm, cold, giving them light and sanity, while also having access to the most speed bursts in the game. Combat's going to be a 6 out of 10, because WX doesn't have any damage multipliers, but the speed bonus WX is able to achieve makes dodging every mob a breeze. And WX's difficulty is going to be a 4 out of 10. Pretty decent character with a lot of different buffs that can be applied to them. Wickerbottom, the native librarian of the constant, starts with 125 health, 150 hunger, and a massive 250 sanity pool, and 2 papyrus. Wickerbottom can craft different books at her bookcase and the magic stations with her player-specific crafting tab and read them for various effects, which we'll cover later. Wickerbottom takes significantly less nutrition from food that is stale and will straight up refuse to eat anything that is spoiled. Wickerbottom also cannot sleep because insomnia strikes each time she tries. She can also craft all recipes which normally require a science machine, but without a science machine, and she can craft alchemy engine recipes with just a science machine. This is helpful for the early game, but otherwise not too amazing. Wickerbottom can craft a bookshelf which acts as her book crafting station, while also acting as storage for papyrus and books. Storing any of Wickerbottom's books inside the bookshelf causes them to slowly restore their durability. Now for the main event, let's talk about all of Wickerbottom's books, what they do, and what they're best used for. Sleepy Time Stories costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and 2 nightmare fuel to craft, and has 5 uses before breaking. This book acts as a pamphlet with a way bigger range. Reading it puts mobs to sleep within a 30-meter radius, but this book does have a longer casting animation than the pamphlet, but can be mass produced unlike the pamphlet. Birds of the World costs Wickerbottom 50 sanity to read and costs 2 papyrus and 2 eggs to craft with the bookshelf, and has 3 uses before breaking. Causes 20 to 30 birds to fly down from the sky in an area around the player who read the book. You can use this book in combination with the previous book, Sleepy Time Stories, to make an easy bird farm for various coloured feathers, meat, and Krampus farm. Simply read Birds of the World, then read Sleepy Time Stories, then go around killing all the birds before they wake up. Once you kill enough birds, Krampus may spawn close by. Make sure to fence off an 8x8 area to do this farm so the Krampus don't get in, and so they don't scare the birds away from being too close to the birds. Also be sure to drop a twig or something close to the edge of the fences so Krampus will get stuck on the fence trying to steal them. Then whenever you're ready, kill the Krampus. Changing the turf in the area you spawn the birds will cause different birds to spawn, also dependent on the season. Here's a screenshot of a Wickerbottom feather farm, but if you want more details, you can check out my Wickerbottom video in the card in the top right or in the description, where I talk about the mechanics and other ways to kill the Krampus en masse. On Tentacles, costs 50 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, costs 2 papyrus and 1 tentacle spot to craft, and has 5 uses before breaking. Reading this book will spawn up to 3 tentacles between 3 and 8 meters from the reader. These tentacles are the same as naturally spawning tentacles. If a tentacle chooses a spawning location which is blocked by a wall or structure, it will simply not spawn, so sometimes you may get less than 3 tentacles per read. This means you can build walls in a 7x7 or 8x8 wall unit square, like this, knock them down, and then read the books from the center. This will keep you safe from the tentacles that spawn around you if you're in the middle of the square. This is useful for making traps for bosses like Bee Queen, which I used in my Wickerbottom all boss run, which you can find in the description. The end is nigh. Costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and a red gem to build, and has 5 uses. This book causes 16 lightning strikes to strike the area around the reader. This book used to be essential in the Wickerbottom and WX combo, which would overcharge WX for all of their buffs, but this was removed as of WX78's reworks, so this use case no longer exists and don't starve together, which leaves this book with little to no use, I think, other than giving WX charges on their charge meter, or charging goats to make them drop their Vault Goat milk. And that's all of Wickerbottom's original books. Now we're moving on to the books which were introduced with her changes and rework. Horticulture Abridged costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 5 seeds, and 5 manure to craft, and has 5 uses. When read, it causes up to 10 nearby plants which grow edible produce to instantly grow, including but not limited to berry bushes, banana bushes, stone fruit bushes, and farm plants from seeds. Though, farm plants and this book are a little complicated. Let me explain. When you force farm plants to grow this way, they rapidly go through each growth stage, producing and consuming nutrients, consuming water, etc. But since you cannot tend to the plants quick enough, nor water them fast enough, you'll never get giant crops growing plants this way. Also, even if you could, there's the fact that there is a coded block which says you simply cannot grow giants if you use this book. Although if you plant crop combos such as potato and tomato in autumn and spring, asparagus, pumpkin, potato in winter, tomato, tomato, dragon fruit in spring and summer, as the crops grow due to the book, they will produce appropriate nutrients for each other, such that they'll be happy enough so you get at least 1 seed back plus the crop, so you can farm the same crops again repeatedly. Horticulture Expanded costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 1 Horticulture Abridged, and a feather pencil to craft, and has 3 uses. Essentially an improved version of a Horticulture Abridged. It grows up to 15 plants instead of 10, but also while growing farm plants from seeds, it makes them rapidly go through each growth stage, and it will tend to them on each growth stage and resupply the farming soil with nutrients. This makes it easier to get more seeds back from the plant, even if the plant is planted in the wrong season with the no crop combo, as the book refills nutrients in the soil and tends to the plants on every growth stage. For example, if you plant 4 dragon fruit seeds in autumn, which means they're out of season, but have the family bonus and there is no weeds nearby, then read Horticulture Expanded, you will get 1 seed back along with the dragon fruit to farm them all again. If you want to get more seeds, simply plant the plant in season, for example 4 dragon fruit seeds in spring, then read Horticulture Expanded, you'll get 8 dragon fruit seeds and 4 dragon fruits. It's worth noting that another way to duplicate seeds for a farm crop that isn't in season is plant 4 of that crop, water the soil, then read Horticulture Expanded, continue watering the soil as it grows. This should result in 2 seeds returned from each crop despite them being out of season. The minimum requirements for this kind of farm is at least 4 of one type of seed for the family bonus and no nearby weeds. Then you'll get the seed returns as described before. It is still Still impossible for this book to grow giants, however, due to a block coded into the book itself. Applied Silviculture costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, and 1 living log to craft. Has 5 uses. This is similar to the previous 2 books, except this book only grows plants which produce non-edible produce, such as trees, grass, tufts, and saplings, while having no limit to the number of plants it can grow in the area. Using this book, you can make trees grow instantly, ready for bearer to pulverize, or more commonly, you can set up hyper-productive grass, tuft, and sapling low plant farms. You can check out my Wickerbottom video or my ultimate base video for a more in-depth explanation of this farm, but here's how it works. Plant grass, tufts, saplings, or monkey tails in a pattern like this, so that there's room for eye plants to spawn around them. Turf the area with natural and man-made turf so that eye plants don't grow close to you. Plant the low plant in the center. After 3 days, the low plant will have grown along with its eye plants. The eye plants will harvest the plants and store the items they ate in the low plant bowl. It's at this point you can read a few applied silviculture books to cause more twigs and grass to grow and be instantly harvested. Then once you have enough, kill the low plant and bam! Stacks of grass and twigs and reeds, potentially. It's important to note that low plants digest and delete items over time, so keep this farm away from your base, or I'd recommend in the caves. That way the eye plants only eat the plants once they're loaded, so only when you're nearby. Also, when low plants harvest grass, it doesn't spawn grass geckos. The Angler's Survival Guide costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 2 wooden bull bobbers to craft with 3 uses. This book simply spawns a school of fish in any nearby ocean water. The type of fish that are spawned are dependent on the ocean type. For example, reading in deep ocean will only spawn deep ocean fish. But with this book, you probably won't be reading it in the deep ocean, as this book can make an insane fish farm close to the shore. It looks like this. Build some docks in a shape like this, read the books from this bookshelf here, then once you think you have enough fish, look at this very precisely placed cannon, obtained from Monkey Queen Island, then fire it twice, which kills all the fish, then grab your masses of fish meat, and then you win. Pyrokinetics Explained costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 1 feather pencil, and 1 Ender's Nye book to craft with 3 uses. When you cast this book, it puts out all fires, burning objects, and smoldering objects within a 3 turf radius, and then oddly, the book will create something called a fiery pen with 10% durability for each extinguished and burning object, and 5% for each smoldering object. Up to 1 single fiery pen with up to 100% durability can be made at a time. If you use the book once again, it will recharge any fiery pens to 100%. Any overflow will not create a new pen unless all your pens are already 100% durability. What does a fiery pen do? It's a fire staff, except it takes 10% durability per cast rather than 5%, and it has no sanity cost to use. This book isn't super useful due to its small range, but could be useful like having a bookcase in the middle of the base. If your base catches fire, you can quickly read the book to put it out. Overcoming Arachnophobia costs 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, and 8 silk to craft with 5 uses. Creates a 3x3 turf area size spiderweb under the player. This web works similar to a normal spiderweb in that it slows land creatures down but doesn't affect flying creatures or other players. The web lasts for 2 minutes on the ground. This book is useful for slowing down some bosses like Ancient Guardian and the Nightmare Werepig, although you may have to cover a large area for those bosses. An interesting interaction with the web and Ancient Guardian is that when Ancient Guardian runs into a pillar, he's stunned for an amount of time. This amount of time is determined by how long he was charging for before hitting the pillar. Interestingly, Ancient Guardian's charge times out based on the distance he has been charging, which leads to this interaction. Having Ancient Guardian charge over a web means he will move slowly, so he's charging for a lot longer time-wise, but for the same distance. So when he crashes into the pillar, he will have been charging for much longer than without the web, and so will stay stunned on the floor for significantly longer. This is hard to pull off as Ancient Guardian needs to get off the web before hitting the pillar, otherwise he doesn't travel fast enough to connect to the pillar to get stunned. You can stun him for over 20 seconds using this method. Typically without this method, you can only stun him for like 5 to 7 seconds. Tempering Temperatures, 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and 1 thermal stone to craft, and has 5 uses. Removes wetness from all characters within a 4 tile radius while drying the items in their inventories and backpacks. The book also sets the temperatures of the affected characters to 35 degrees. It also unfreezes everything in its range. I guess if your boat just crashed and you just drowned, you can read this book. Oopsie daisy, I drowned my friends. Don't worry boys, I got you. Mwah. All fixed. Otherwise, I guess during spring and you don't have rain protection, you can use this book, but you'd probably rather just have rain protection to stop from getting wet in the first place. Or use another one of Wickerbottom's books to simply turn off the rain, but we'll get to that soon. Though this book does have a use being unfreezing your bee friends during Crab King fight when they get frozen. Wait. Wickerbottom's bee friends? We'll get to that later, don't worry. Lux Eterna, 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and 2 light bulbs to craft with 3 uses. Upon reading, a beam of light shines down from above onto the character, where it will remain for 4 minutes. This book does not work in the cave and will simply cause an earthquake. An interesting note about this book is that if farm plants are within the light created from this book, they will continue to grow during nighttime. Typically, farm plants do not grow during the night without natural light, which means this beam of light is natural light. So Wickerbottom can create suns? Lux Eterna Redux, 33 sanity sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 1 Eterna redux, and 1 feather pencil to craft with 5 uses. Effectively an improved version of the previous book, beams down a ray of light which lasts 2 days instead of half a day. Reading this book in the caves causes an earthquake too. And in our testing, the light radius seems to be the same. Practical rain rituals. 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and 2 down feathers to craft with 5 uses. When you read this book and it's raining, the rain will stop. When you read this book and it isn't raining, the rain will start. It also increases the humidity of nearby farming soil upon casting for rain to come. This is one of Wickerbottom's most useful books. Being able to turn the rain off in spring makes spring basically a second autumn. Being able to cool rain during summer stops wildfires and stops the sandstorm in the Oasis Desert, so you can walk around without worrying about wildfires, antline, or wearing any desert goggles. Though all of this will resume once the rain stops and everything dries off. An interesting way to kill antline with help from this book is doing the following. Find antline, feed him a cold thermal stone, then once he's frozen, cool in the rain, then fight him without any sandstorm. Antline normally despawns if the sandstorm subsides, but since he is engaged in combat by eating the cold thermal stone, he will not despawn. Lunar Grimoire, 50 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus, 2 moonmoth wings from Lunar Island, and 1 iridescent gem to craft for 3 uses. Upon reading, the current day's night will be a full moon night. This also interrupts the lunar cycle. By default, full moons happen on day 11 and every 20 days after that. If you activate this book, for example, on day 5, full moon will be day 5 and every 20 days after that, unless you use the book again, of course. This book requiring an iridescent gem might sound daunting, as we've already described in the rules section how you're meant to acquire an iridescent gem, but there are actually 2 iridescent gems sitting in the world on day 1. You just have to find them by going into the archives. If you rush the archives and steal the 2 iridescent gems laying in the pedestals, you can use these gems and a quick visit to the Lunar Island to craft yourself 2 lunar grimoires within your first autumn. Storing these 2 books in your bookcase will allow them to slowly restore durability over time, and you can have a full moon every night forever as long as they stay in the bookcase. Pretty useful, as you don't have to worry about surface darkness until you forget to read the book. Apicultural notes. 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, cost 2 papyrus, 4 honey, and 8 stingers to craft with 3 uses. Each read summons 2 friendly grumblebees. They're grumblebees that Bee Queen normally summon. These grumblebees act like normal followers. They protect you from harm and are passive to your teammates. You can summon up to 16 grumblebees before Wickerbottom will refuse to summon more, so you can't have a game-chugging horde, unfortunately. Funnily, but not surprisingly enough, if you attempt to fight Bee Queen with your treacherous grumblebees, Bee Queen will yell at her subordinates before their resolve crumbles and they serve their original queen once more. So basically, your grumblebees simp harder for Bee Queen than Wickerbottom. What the hell? In my Wickerbottom run, I use these bees for almost every fight, and it's a similar playstyle to Weber. They're good or even great against some bosses, but are squished by most AoE attacks. Still a very powerful book. 16 grumblebees have a DPS of 120 plus Wickerbottom with the Dark Sword, increases that DPS to 256, so 94.1% the DPS of Wolfgang with the Dark Sword. The Everything Encyclopedia. 33 sanity for Wickerbottom to read, 2 papyrus and 1 electrical doodad to craft with 3 uses. Upon reading, lower the science, magic, and think tank tiers needed for crafting recipes, meaning anyone around you can craft anything which is normally locked behind a science machine, alchemy engine, think tank, or prestidigitator. To unlock shadow manipulator recipes with this effect, you only need a science machine or a magic station. One read gives 1 effect per person around you in a 1 tile radius, and this effect stacks. So if you read this book twice, someone can craft a football helmet and a pamphlet without having already learnt the recipes, nor being close to the normal necessary science or magic stations. This book is useful if you're in a small team. For example, you really want to access shadow manipulator gear without needing a shadow manipulator, like a Wickerbottom and Wanda in a team trying to rush Wanda's weapon without a shadow manipulator. This book is very cheap to make, so can be somewhat easily produced for unlocking lots of recipes for lots of players. Normally you get 15 sanity when crafting a new recipe for the first time, but if you craft a recipe for the first time using this book, you don't gain the 15 sanity. And that's all of Wickerbottom's books. All have their uses, some more useful than others. Now we must discuss the act of casting these books. As you know, each book has a sanity cost when read, but what happens when you're insane? Surely I can just keep reading the books with no sanity cost because I'm already 0 sanity. Well, yes, but every time you read a book while you are insane, or the reading of a book causes you to go insane, 1 shadow creature will spawn, which means if you stay insane and keep reading the books, you'll be greeted with an army of shadow creatures by the time you're done. There's multiple ways around this. Either keep eating sanity food, but as the books can cost up to 50 sanity or so per read, this would be pretty expensive to farm all the sanity food. The other workaround is to read on Lunar Island or during a lunar full moon on the main island. In both scenarios, your sanity is replaced with lunacy, and shadow creatures do not exist during this time, so they won't spawn. The final workaround is defeating Ancient Fuel Weaver to acquire the Bone Helmet. This helmet artificially drops your sanity to 0 while your real sanity value is hidden. and make shadow creatures passive towards you. So no matter how many shadow creatures you spawn, you can ignore them with this helmet. And once you're done reading, eat some sanity food with the bone helmet still on, then take the helmet off. The shadow creatures might try to hit you but will start despawning. You can also raise your sanity, then hop into the caves to simply get away from the shadow creatures. Wickerbottom's favourite food is surf and turf, fitting that she can farm a ton of fish. This dish is used for healing usually, so the extra hunger doesn't make it any more worth making, but it's still a good dish. Wickerbottom's survivability is lower than normal due to her not taking full nutrition from stale food and not eating spoiled food, but her books could make up for that, so her survivability is a 5 out of 10. Wickerbottom is one of the most powerful utility characters in the game with all of her books, so her utility rating is going to be a 10 out of 10. Meanwhile, Wickerbottom's combat is the same as any other character, except she can summon grumblebees and lay spiderwebs, so can swarm some bosses relatively cheaply thanks to her bookshelf recharging her books, so her combat is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. And finally, a difficulty rating of 5.5 out of 10. Very strong utility character and one of the most useful characters you can have in a team. Woodie is a character who can transform into many different creatures, which we will get to, but firstly, he has 150 health, 150 hunger, along with 200 sanity. He has a beard which you cannot shave, so provides insulation in winter but works against you in summer. Woodie is also a lumberjack and starts with an axe with infinite durability called Lucy. Now is the time you ask yourself whether Lucy is actually sentient and talking to you, or you've just gone insane from watching too many of my videos. Woodie chops faster than normal characters and at a higher efficiency, so he chops faster, like a faster animation, and he takes less chops to chop down a tree. Being a natural enemy of the forest, tree guards have a higher chance to spawn when Woodie chops down some trees. And finally, Woodie's transformations. On a full moon, or when Woodie eats 2 monster foods in under 4 minutes, Woodie will randomly transform into one of 3 were-creatures. Were-goose runs with a 1.4 times speed modifier and can run on water. Were-moose, 90% damage reduction, deals 59.5 damage per attack, and without animation cancelling, it attacks at a rate of 1.75 times per second, which is 12.5% slower DPS than Woodie using Handbat, so not too good. Also has a 0.9 times movement multiplier, so moves a little bit slower than Woodie. The Were-moose also has a charge ability, which hits everything in a line that is hit by the moose. If the moose hits an object, he will damage the object like a hammer, and will walk slowly as he recovers from the impact for a few seconds. Were-beaver chops more efficiently than Woodie, can mine, dig, and hammer but at a low efficiency than a normal player, doesn't summon tree guards when chopping trees, has a 1.1 times movement multiplier, and has 25% damage reduction. All of the wereforms have night vision, and all of the wereforms drain your sanity by 6 per minute. All wereforms have partial weather protection, being 240 insulation from cold and heat, along with being 70% waterproof. Upon transforming into any of the wereforms, your hunger meter is replaced with a were meter. When this were meter runs out, you transform back to Woodie with 0 hunger. All forms slowly drain your were meter unless you're not doing the corresponding activity for the creature, then it drains extremely fast. For the moose, you need to be in combat, the were-goose you need to be moving, and the were-beaver you need to be working. The longest you can stay transformed is 4 minutes if you keep doing the appropriate tasks, or 8 minutes during a full moon, as all forms were meter drains half as fast during a full moon. All forms cannot pick up items nor interact with the player's inventory. For example, you can't eat food to heal or gather items from the ground while you're a were creature. You drop worn items except for backpacks when you transform. Now, to control what you transform into, Woodie can craft the corresponding creature's idols. The were-beaver idol requires 3 monster meat and 2 logs. The were-moose requires 3 monster meat and 2 grass. The were-goose requires 3 monster meat and 3 seeds. Since when you transform back, your hunger is set to 0, you can also utilize this to fend off starvation. So you're about to start starving, instead, you can transform. Woodie also has an odd loyalty and recruitment perk, so when Woodie recruits a pig, he can recruit them for up to 3 days. Normally, this limit is 2.5 days. And when recruiting bunnymen, gains a bonus loyalty time of 2 minutes, while recruiting rock lobsters gains a loyalty bonus time of 1 minute. Woodie's transformations are quite underwhelming. The goose is useful for early game when you have little to no speed bonus, and then Woodie can like rush the Winona Islands for kelp, stone fruit bushes, and glass cutters. The were-beaver is fine for cutting wood, but you get no tree guards, and the were-moose is counterintuitive. He's meant to be good in combat, but moves slower than normal, and his DPS in his form is lower than Woodie with a fresh handbat, because it has a low attack speed. I did an all boss run with Woodie and forced myself to use the wereforms as much as possible, and it was painful. Woodie's wereforms are good in the very early game for beginners when you have like no resources, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend them. Woodie's favorite food is honey nuggets, which is easy to make, and the extra hunger is decent. Consider making using them if you need a small amount of health and 52.5 hunger, like meatballs, but also with 20 health. His survivability is technically neutral since he has default stats and an unshavable beard, which helps in winter but doesn't help in summer. But during full moons, being transformed to were creatures and being transformed back from a were creature leaves you in a vulnerable state, along with not being able to interact with your inventory at all while you're a were creature. It makes it pretty easy for you to die, and your demise is usually out of your control. And you'll be transforming a lot in the late game when moonstorms are active, or you have a Wickerbottom making it full moon every night. So survivability is going to be a 5 out of 10. Utility is a 7 out of 10, as Woodie can chop trees quite fast and rush Lunar Island, but that's kind of all he can do. And as we'll see later, Maxwell is the best wood gatherer in the game. And Woodie's combat is a 5 out of 10, as your best DPS as Woodie is not using his were forms, and therefore he's the same as any other character. There aren't a lot of circumstances where Woodie's moose transformation is just better than being human, unless you perfectly execute multiple charges over like shadow spelunkies to kill them without messing up. And he has a difficulty rating of 5.5 just because dealing with the were forms is a little bit annoying, but otherwise a pretty decent starter character as long as you can keep on top of the were forms. Wes is the best character in the game. Wait. Oh, sorry, I got my notes mixed up. Wes sucks balls. Not literally, he's just bad. He's designed to be the challenge character in the game, and so if you want a challenge, you play Walter. Wes. Wes cannot talk because he finds it difficult to express in words how much he would like to grab your face and begin peeling off your skin. He's a mime. So he refuses to talk, as he was not taught to talk in mime military training. He also has the lowest stats in the game with 75 health, hunger, and sanity, with a delicious damage modifier of, 0.75 times? Oh no, he does less damage than Wilson. On the upside, Wes has a balloon crafting tab at the cost of 5 sanity, which at this point you have none left to give. You can make balloons with various abilities. Pile of balloons. Wes starts with this, and Wes can craft default balloons from it, costing 5 sanity each. These balloons can be attacked. Upon being attacked, they detonate. Wait, no. They pop, and they deal 5 AoE damage. Speed balloon. This balloon is actually kind of good. Equipping this balloon increases your movement speed by 30% until it reaches 66% durability, at which point it provides 20% movement speed, and finally at 33% durability it provides 10% movement speed. The first being the total durability of the balloon is only 2 minutes, 1/4 of a day. If you drop this balloon on the floor while it has durability left, it will float away into the sky where it will finally find peace. And all your teammates can laugh at you for dropping your balloon because it will appear on their map. Also, getting hit while holding the balloon causes you to drop it, so you got a kite flawlessly with this balloon to keep using it. Party balloon. When popped, it gives area of effect sanity equal to the number of players in its radius multiplied by 4, while having a maximum sanity gain of 16. This is a slow but cheap way of giving sanity to you and your team, so long as there's more than just you. The next two balloons aren't balloons, but they are made out of balloons. Inflatable vest will cause you to not lose any health if you fall into the ocean, but taking physical damage, it reaching 0% durability or falling into the ocean causes the vest to pop and deal 5 damage. Balloon hat negates lightning strikes and provides 20% wetness resistance. It's same as the vest in that taking physical damage or durability hitting 0 will pop the hat dealing 5 damage. Back to the downsides of Wes, which there are loads of, so let's do this fast. Is more susceptible to overheating and freezing, takes longer to recover from grogginess when you wake up. Hounds will rather chase Wes than other characters. Lightning strikes are more likely to hit Wes over other characters. Wes does not speak, so no audible warning will happen when something is about to happen. For example, a Deerclops attack, but he will do so most if you're not doing anything, and he cannot talk to crops. Wes takes longer to chop, mine, hammer, etc. Weapons and tools durability are drained slower with Wes, meaning he can do the same amount of work as other characters with one pickaxe despite taking more swings to do the task. But this could be seen as an upside, as Wes will get 125 uses from a dark sword rather than 100, while dealing the same theoretical total damage. If you use a dark sword versus 34 hounds, Wilson would kill 33 out of those 34 hounds, Wes would kill 44 hounds. This is because Wilson deals overkill damage, which effectively wastes some of the total damage the dark sword could have delivered. So despite Wes dealing less damage per strike, in this case, actually delivers over 20% more damage than Wilson from the dark sword because he had less overkill damage than Wilson. Wes is meant to be the hardest character to survive as, but as we'll see later, there is another character who can have lower health than Wes, so Wes's survivability is a 2. Wes's utility, on the other hand, is quite useful with his balloons, where they can give the team speed, sanity, and even taunt hounds with his balloons. But he also takes longer to gather resources from every source, so we're going to rate him a 4 out of 10 for utility. As for combat, Wes does 0.75 times damage of a normal character, so 3.5 out of 10, even though 0.75 times damage isn't that bad, because there is another character who could theoretically have even lower DPS than Wes, but we'll get to that later. Guess which character. Wes's favourite food is fresh fruit crepes, which normally give 150 hunger, 60 health and 50 insanity, but since Wes has a max hunger of 75, he cannot gain the 150 hunger nor the 15 bonus hunger he gets from it being his favourite food. So a character which is just, if you want to troll or you just want to challenge yourself, play Wes, or if you want to be banned immediately from any server, play Wes. Maxwell begins with one of the lowest health in the game of 75, along with 150 hunger and 200 sanity. Maxwell starts with the Codex Umbra, which can be used to cast 4 different abilities, which we will get to later. Maxwell can craft a Magician's Top Hat with a top hat and 2 Nightmare Fuel. Wearing this top hat regenerates 3.3 sanity per minute, but that's not the reason you'll be crafting it. The reason you'll be crafting this hat is because holding shift and right clicking the hat will allow you to store items in a shadow dimension. This shadow dimension can be accessed by any Maxwell with a Magician Top Hat or any player with a Shadow Chester, which you can make by putting 1 Nightmare Fuel in each of the default Chester's inventory slots during a full moon. Be warned, since this storage is effectively in the void, if your only access to the items is destroyed or lost, then you cannot access the items again until you gain a new access point. For example, if Shadow Chester dies with items inside him, he does not drop them. Those items are lost in the void until you make a Magician's Hat or another Shadow Chester where the items will be waiting. Or Maxwell can make a Magician's Box, which is a structure to access void storage by any player. What this effectively boils down to is you craft a Magician's Top Hat for extra inventory slots. Sweet. Anyway, back to the Codex Umbra book. This book has 4 spells along with 20 durability. Upon reaching 0% durability, the book does not get destroyed. Instead, you can refuel it with Nightmare Fuel for 25% durability per Nightmare Fuel. The spells have the following effects. Shadow Worker. Summoning a Shadow Worker will reduce your maximum sanity by 15% for each worker that you summon, up to 6. Although summoning 6 will keep you insane, so you may prefer to summon 5 so you're not kept insane. The Shadow Worker has an area in which it will perform work. This area can be seen when summoning it. The worker will do all kinds of work in this area, equipping different tools as it needs. So the worker can chop, dig, mine, and it will pick grass from grass tufts and twigs from saplings, along with picking up resources from the ground and handing them to Maxwell. They only have 1 inventory slot. The workers will continue working while there is work in their area to do until you either run so far away that you unload them, or their timer expires, which is around 4 minutes, and they will also despawn early if they have no work to do and you run outside of their working area. This makes Maxwell the best woodcutter in the game, since his puppets not only chop and dig the trees, but Maxwell can pick up and refine the logs as the puppets are also picking up and chopping, although tree guards can disrupt this process, in which case the shadow workers do try to run away from danger like tree guards. Shadow Duelist. The Shadow Duelist costs 15% maximum sanity per summon and has a pitiful 75 health and only does 20 damage and only attacks once every 1.86 seconds. But wait, it's not as bad as it seems, because its damage can be increased by wearing different tiers of shadow gear. There's a lot of shadow gear, so here's a chart which shows the damage bonus and which tier of damage bonus each bit of gear gives your puppets, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also, every 8 seconds or so, the Shadow Duelist will perform a dash attack, which deals 1.5 times the damage of a default slash. Though this dash attack will have a much greater cooldown of 16 seconds if Maxwell is not fighting alongside with the puppets, even if you're close by. Another way to influence their damage other than equipment is if Maxwell is within a 4-tile range range from his puppets, they will deal more damage than if he was more than 4 tiles away from them. With the maximum buffs to your Shadow Duelist, they can deal 60 damage with their default attack while you wear Bone Helmet, Bone Armor, and Shadow Throwable. But that's not very practical, so in game you'll probably find yourself wearing something like this. In the early game, a Magician's Top Hat, maybe a Dark Sword, and some Knight Armor, giving each of your Shadow Puppets a DPS of 26 to 27. Mid to late game, you might be wearing Bone Armor, Thullsight Crown, and a Dark Sword, meaning your actual damage output for each puppet with this setup would come to about 29.6 DPS per duelist. And if you want to see the calculation, it's on screen. And with the maximum DPS in max gear being about 37 DPS per puppet. This number will change in game, since if your puppet is about to attack and they get hit, they teleport away from their attacker and then must run back to begin attacking again. Shadow Duelists will serve you for 2 minutes before despawning, unless it is killed before then. Speaking of which, Shadow Duelists have a special trait, being that they cannot be one hit, despite them only having 75 health. So the maximum a Shadow Duelist can be hit initially is 15 damage, with one little downside. The damage cap that the Duelist can take in one hit increases by 5 damage for every 2.5 seconds that it does not get hit while still staying in combat. Meaning, if a Shadow Puppet doesn't get hit for 30 seconds while still staying in combat, the next hit that would deal 75 damage will theoretically one-hit the Duelist. But after testing this, while the damage cap increase is true, there seems to be a rule which overrides one-hitting Shadow Duelists. As you can see, we should have hit 75, but instead, the Shadow Puppet got hit to 1 HP. This proves the rule is true, with the exception that Shadow Puppets cannot be one-hit from full HP. This isn't too bad, since it's just a balancing mechanic so that your Shadow Duelists don't survive absolutely everything. So to maximize your puppet's damage, wear the best tier Shadow gear you have to buff their damage, stay within 4 tiles of your puppets so they do more damage, and attack with them so they do their dash attack once every 8 seconds rather than 16 seconds. You can achieve this comfortably on top of an ornery B-flow while wearing top Shadow gear. The Shadow Duelist will attack anything that Maxwell does, but will not attack Shadow creatures even if Maxwell attacks a Shadow creature. Whew, that's the complicated stuff out the way. Lastly, there are 2 spells. The Shadow Prison. After a short cast time and a one-time sanity cost, it will spawn a prison around the enemies in the casting area, keeping them immobile until the prison begins shaking, which indicates it's about to collapse. The prison lasts for a shorter period when used against bosses, but is the most useful against bosses. The prison lasts for 24 seconds versus normal enemies such as pigmen, but only 12 seconds against bosses, and 6 seconds against other people in PvP. This time is reduced even more if the trapped target is attacked. For a boss like Ancient Guardian or the Twins of Terror, which both get their difficulty from moving fast, their difficulty can be completely negated by a well-timed Maxwell Shadow Prison. Lastly, we have the Shadow Sneak. It costs 15 sanity to cast and lays a shadow trap on the floor. If a creature enters the trap's range, it triggers and will frighten the creature, causing it to run around randomly for 12 seconds. While a creature is panicking, they won't attack back. The trap will last 3 in-game days before disappearing, and it has no effect on bosses. Though it has some special effects with some mobs such as rabbits, it will turn the rabbit into a shadow rabbit along with turning monkeys into shadow spelunkies, and when either of these transformed creatures are affected by the trap, they're guaranteed to drop a Nightmare Fuel, whereas usually they only have a chance to drop Nightmare Fuel. Though if you wanted to farm Nightmare Fuel as Maxwell, simply spawn the maximum amount of Shadow Workers to lock you into being insane, then kill the Shadow creatures as they spawn, while remaining within your workers' range so they don't despawn early. A few last things. A spider hit by the Shadow Sneak will guarantee drop a spider gland if it's killed. Maxwell naturally regenerates 6.67 sanity per minute. Maxwell can read all of Wickerbottom's books, but usually at a higher sanity cost than Wickerbottom. If you lose or destroy your Codex Umbra, you can craft another for 2 Papyrus, 2 Nightmare Fuel, and minus 50 health. Maxwell is the best wood chopper, only rivaled by Wurt and Berger, but can be superior since he can pick up wood while chopping them down. Whereas with Berger, you must chop down all the trees, then dig up the stumps, then pick up all the wood, and you cannot do all 3 at the same time. And we'll talk about Wurt in Wurt's section. Maxwell's favorite food is Wobster Dinner, which heals for 60 health, 37.5 hunger, and 50 sanity. But Maxwell gains the bonus 15 hunger, so 52.5 hunger. A great overall dish if you can make it, but it requires butter, so it's kinda hard to make and kinda rare. Maxwell's survivability is a 4.5 out of 10, since he has low max health as Wes, but has Shadow Duelists and prisons to defend him if need be. You should almost always be wearing armor as Maxwell, as most bosses can just one him. Maxwell's utility is gonna be a 10 out of 10, since he's the best wood chopper, can read Wickerbottom's books, collect materials, and immobilize enemies. While Maxwell's combat's gonna be an 8 out of 10 due to his Duelist being decent against everything, even bosses, and the ability to immobilize most bosses. And Maxwell's difficulty is gonna be a 6 out of 10 due to the low max health, and you'll need some slight mastery over your sanity. Wigfrid is a warrior who excels in combat and starts with her very own spear and helmet, which we will discuss later. But first, her stats and downsides. Wigfrid has higher than normal health at 200 with only 120 hunger and sanity. Wigfrid only eats meat, yep, that means no more snacking on berries or carrots that you find while running around the world. Nor can she eat crockpot dishes that require no meat or eggs, such as dragon fruit pie. But dishes which do require meat and vegetables or filler like pierogies and meatballs, she can still eat. Along with that, Wigfrid can also eat food items which count as goodies, which are jelly beans, taffy, volt, goat chow, fried and mushy cake. Wigfrid can craft battle spears which deal 42.5 base damage. For comparison, a normal spear deals 34 base damage. She can also craft battle helmets which provide 80% damage reduction and have almost double the durability of football helmets for the cheap price of rocks and gold. So you'll probably be making these helmets for you and your team at least for a while. Now for the rest of Wigfrid's perks, which are all very powerful. Wigfrid by default deals 1.25 times damage, so 25% more damage than a normal character, and has 25% damage reduction by default. So if she gets slapped by a pigman without wearing any armor, instead of taking 33 damage, she will take 25 damage. When you mix armor into the equation, what happens is the following. Wigfrid wearing her battle helmet provides 80% damage reduction, so being hit by a pigman will deal 33 damage, 80% or 26.4 damage of which gets absorbed by the armor. The rest, 20% or 6.6 damage, hits Wigfrid, at which point Wigfrid's built-in damage reduction reduces the 6.6 down to 4.95, which is then applied against your health. Okay, that's Wigfrid's damage output and reduction explained. Now, that was the simple part. Now we move on to her other built-in perk, her health and sanity steal effect. When Wigfrid attacks an enemy, she'll gain sanity and health based on the damage she dealt, the damage the enemy she's fighting deals, and the enemy's health. If you want specifics, here's the formula on the screen, but what this means is Wigfrid gains a good amount of health and sanity when killing small and medium mobs like spiders and pigmen, but when she's fighting bosses, she gains a lot less health and sanity per hit from this perk, but still a noticeable amount over time. The perk itself is very powerful, it can save you time and resources. Health and sanity isn't the only thing Wigfrid gains while fighting. She also has an inspiration meter. You're starting to understand the meme that for every rework, Clay just adds a character specific meter now. Anyway, this inspiration meter goes up faster the higher level creature you're fighting. For example, fighting a spider, it goes up slowly, but fighting Deerclops, it goes up very fast. Here's the formula for the inspiration meter. Just know that fighting small enemies makes it go up slowly, while fighting big bad bosses makes it go up faster. And Wigfrid also gains inspiration when she gets hit by enemies, but you probably shouldn't rely on getting hit to gain inspiration. But what does this inspiration do? Well, as you can see, there are 3 little pointy bits on the inspiration meter. Each time your inspiration fills up enough to hit one of those points, the point will activate, and you can now activate one of Wigfrid's passive songs. Wigfrid has many songs she can craft in her own character crafting tab, which gives some weak but some really powerful effects. Some of these songs are passive and will be hooked up to your inspiration meter, others cost a one-time cost of inspiration to activate. With 3 points on your inspiration meter, you can use up to 3 passive songs at once. Let's now discuss all of Wigfrid's songs, what they do and what they're useful for. All Wigfrid's songs cost 1 papyrus, 1 feather pencil, and 1 other item to craft. Weaponized warble, you're gonna need a sewing kit to make this song. This is a passive song which after activating reduces the weapon durability drain of you and your teammates' weapons around you by 25%. So you and your teammates' dark swords will deal 125 hits rather than 100. Pretty decent song if you have no other songs to use, as it effectively saves you some resources. It only works on weapons which have a left click combat action basically, like swords and staffs, but not weather panes. Heartrending ballads, you're gonna need a life-giving amulet to make this. A passive song which after casting provides your teammates with the following effect. They gain 1 health every time they hit an enemy. That's insane. This applies to all players nearby, while Wigfrid herself gains a similar effect, but instead of 1 HP per hit, she gains half a health point per hit, on top of her natural lifesteal. This is a very powerful song as it gives your entire team the lifesteal effect of Wigfrid, most useful when fighting for an extended period like against bosses, and is quite cheap to craft. Interesting information to put into perspective how powerful this song is it allows players to tank Dragonfly without much food, as you will heal 14 to 16 health for every 1 hit Dragonfly will deal to you, and if you wear 80% damage reduction armor, every 1 Dragonfly hit will only damage you for 15 damage. Clear-minded Cadenza, 1 Moonmoth Wing from Luna Island. Another passive song which has the same effect as the Heartrending Ballad, but instead of health, it heals sanity by 1 every time a hit is landed on an enemy. Wigfrid this time around gains the full +1 sanity gain without a penalty like the Heartrending Ballad. This song is one of the best as it keeps your teammates sane during boss fights as long as they keep attacking. Also keeps you and your team's Enlightened Crown at 100% uptime for an extra DPS of 85 per crown, purely provided by each Enlightened Crown, without needing extra sanity food. In case you don't know what the crown does, every time you you land a hit on an enemy, the crown will fire off a gestalt as long as you have higher than 85% sanity, and it costs you 1 sanity, and that gestalt deals 42.5 damage, and you can attack twice per second, so it delivers 85 DPS as long as you keep your sanity above 85%. So every hit with the song you gain 1 sanity, then also 1 hit you lose 1 sanity for the crown to do some damage, so 385 DPS. Belcanto of Courage, 1 Thulsite medallion which you can get by crafting in the ruins. Reduces negative sanity auras by half for nearby players including Wigfrid. Depending on the boss, either this song or Clear-Minded Condenser can be better. Usually Clear-Minded Condenser is better, but typically you'll pair both of the sanity songs up together to be basically immune from going insane. Fireproof Falsetto requires 1... What the heck is that thing? Oh, it's a fish. This fish, the spittle fish, that you can fish near these plants in the deeper... Okay, who cares? You're not going to fish for this fish, because this song sucks harder than Wes. This song is a passive song that provides 33% decrease in fire damage. Only 33%. This song is poo-poo, don't make it. It has no use except if you really like cuddling up with Dragonfly's larvae during the Dragonfly fight. Rude Interlude requires a tomato. This song is not a passive song, instead it's a one-off song which costs some inspiration. This song costs 16 inspiration to cast. Upon casting, it will taunt all nearby enemies onto the caster, which can be used for keeping aggro of creatures off your teammates temporarily. But oddly, it has no effect on bosses. Also, due to how aggro works in this game, this song isn't very useful. Mobs will attack whatever player attacked them last, so as soon as you cast this song and a teammate hits the enemy will just turn back around and begin hitting your teammate again. Startling Soliloquy, I don't know how to say it, requires a purple gem. This song is another one-time use song costing 16 inspiration to cast, and upon casting, it makes nearby enemies panic for 4 seconds or so. Has no effect on bosses. I would say this is particularly useful, but it only makes them panic for 4 seconds, and it has a really long casting time, and given that Maxwell's trap makes things panic for 12 seconds, this song is just very underpowered. So the song isn't too good, but has some uses. And that's all of Wigfrid's songs. Wigfrid's favourite food is turkey dinner, which is already a decent dish, using only vegetables and drumsticks, giving 20 health, 75 hunger, and 5 sanity, but granting Wigfrid a hunger bonus for a total of 90 hunger. Good dish if you have the drumsticks. Survivability for Wigfrid is a clear 10 out of 10. She makes it extremely hard to die. If you keep attacking things, even if you're starving, you won't die. She regenerates health and sanity, so you never need to learn how to deal with sanity or health, and she has built-in damage reduction and easy access to high damage reduction armor, being her battle helmets, and a mediocre but easy to craft weapon. So yeah, best character in the game for staying alive. She makes the game very easy, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say you're playing a different game when you're playing Wigfrid, because the game is on hyper easy mode. Her utility is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. Her songs are technically combat orientated, but the utility of healing your team and raising their sanity means they don't need much, if any, food to raise those stats during a boss fight as long as they don't get hit too much. And Wigfrid's combat is a 6.5 out of 10. Now you might think this is kind of low, but let me explain. Her damage output is only 25% better than a normal character, not even close to Wolfgang or Wanda or even Wendy. And the fact that she can regenerate health and tank a little more effectively gives her a little bit more merit, but we attributed all that towards her survivability score. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10. And then obviously she's going to have a difficulty rating of 1. You don't need to know how to play the game to survive as Wigfrid. Just keep attacking things and you just probably won't die. So she is the easiest character to play in the game. Just make sure you're using Wigfrid's abilities as bonuses to complement your gameplay rather than a crutch to ignore fundamental gameplay and survival mechanics.
There was once a young boy who would not hurt a fly, living on a small farm underneath a blue sky. As the lonely days passed, jealous thoughts filled his mind, and the boy turned to naughtiness when once he was kind. And one fateful night he broke into his father's collection. He tipped over a glass case, and it shattered on the floor. Out came a spider. It gave the bad boy a fright. 8 eyes peered into his soul, and it lunged in for a... Oh, turn away, my dear friend. I don't want you to see. For this boy and this spider were not meant to meet. His parents screamed and they yelled in fright at the sight, and chased him away where he got lost in the night. He vowed he'd be nice. He begged for a way to change back, no matter the price.
Webber is the first character we'll be talking about who is a monster, which means normally neutral mobs like pigmen and buddymen will now be hostile to you. Basically, anything hostile to a spider will be hostile to you as well. Also, being a monster himself means he can eat monster-related foods like monster meat without any negative effects. Webber starts with 175 health, 175 hunger, and a low 100 sanity, along with a few items, spider eggs, monster meat, and a webby whistle. We will discuss these items later. Being a spider, Webber can befriend other spiders as they are neutral towards him. Feeding one monster meat to a spider anywhere of any type will cause the spider you fed and two other nearby spiders to gain an abhorrent smile while also becoming your loyal servants forever. Or at least until they die, or you tell them to go away using this little item here, the shoebox. This box has two effects when activated. It will de-aggro all spiders in the area, and it will dismiss all friendly spiders back to being neutral. So they'll stop following you, and this item has 10 uses. You can find this item in Webber's character-specific crafting tab, where you will also find a host of other items to help tame and control your spiders, and even switch spiders between different types. Let's discuss all of the items in this tab. Firstly, we have spider eggs. Normally you can't craft spider eggs, but Webber can because he is a spoder. Though it is rather expensive to mass produce eggs this way. I would much rather do what I did in my Webber All Boss run, which was to shave a bunch of spider nests using a razor, which grants you one more silk per level of the spider den as opposed to destroying the same nest, something only Webber can do. Then use the excess silk to level up other nests to level 3, which is also only something Webber can do. Then you cause the spiders within the nest to fight each other while you destroy the nest itself to get the spider eggs from the level 3 spider nest, which is only dropped by the level 3 spider nest and spider queens. Next we have the den decorating set. After crafting this, you can use it on up to 5 nests to decorate them, which reduce the web size around the nest, and the nest will stop growing. So if the nest is level 3, it will stay level 3 and not evolve into a spider queen. And it will pacify all spiders that belong to that nest and spiders nearby that nest, so they don't attack your teammates. But be warned, attacking a spider from a decorated den like this will destroy the decorations and cause the spiders to revert back to normal. This is a balancing mechanic, otherwise you'd be able to slaughter the spiders unchecked without them fighting back. This den decorating set has a lot of weird and wacky setups that it can be used in, but the biggest use is effectively parking your spiders. So here's what you do. Place some spider eggs and use the den decorating set on it. Then fence off the spider den and a small area within the spider den with something that spiders will eat but won't perish, like pigskin. Now you can bring your army of spiders to this area, use your shoebox which will cause them to stop following you, then they'll see the pigskin and try to eat it, but since they are pacified from the den decorating set, they will not attack the fence to get to the pigskin. And just like that, you've parked your spiders. You can include these dividers in the setup to store different spiders in different sections to make it easier to recruit specific spiders later. And yes, there are many different types of spiders, which we will discuss later. The webby whistle can be crafted and then blown to call out all spiders from all dens nearby. It also wakes up sleeping spiders and controls already befriended spiders by calling them back to you. This is useful for calling them away from a boss when they're about to get scorched. Healing Glop. This is an item you can craft and use to do some AoE healing to you and your spiders. But you'd much rather use another method of healing you and your spiders, which we will discuss a little later. Next, we have many different variants of an item called a switcherdoodle. These switcherdoodles can be unlocked by befriending the corresponding spider in the world. For example, feeding a monster meat to a Lunar Island shatter spider will befriend it and unlock the shatter switcherdoodle. These switcherdoodles have various recipes and will all transform any spider into the spider corresponding to the switcherdoodle. This is useful for amassing a horde of powerful spiders just by using a bunch of common spiders and a lot of switcherdoodles. But if you're using the before mentioned parking method to store your spiders, you'll most likely be stealing a horde of spiders from the natural world and then storing them at your base, rather than making new spiders all the time with switcherdoodles. Now let's talk about all the types of spiders very quickly because this is a character video, not a spider video. Standard spider, the most common spider, which has a DPS of 6.67 and 100 health, can be found all over the world. Spider warrior, this spider can be found in level 2 and 3 nests and spawned by spider queens. It has 400 health and a pounce attack where it jumps towards its target with a lower DPS than the standard spider as it attacks slower, so its DPS is between 3.3 and 5. Depth dweller, this spider can be found in the caves when there is an indestructible spider web and the spiders climb down from the ceiling. These spiders are mechanically exactly the same as spider warriors, but they just have a different skin. Cave spider, this spider can be found in stalagmites in the caves. This spider is very useful in your arsenal of spiders as after being hit, they will barricade themselves, granting them a massive 75% damage reduction. Otherwise, while not hiding, their DPS is the same as the standard spider, being 6.67, but with 225 health. Spitter spider, this spider can be found in the same spider nests as cave spiders and have 350 health and a slow melee DPS of 3.33. But wait, they have a ranged attack. Despite their low theoretical melee DPS, these spiders will be your main damage dealers as there's only so much space you have around a boss, so these ranged attackers will always be attacking. Their ranged attack is the highest DPS spider attack in your arsenal. The Spitter's ranged attack happens way faster than their melee attack and hits for 20 damage every 2 seconds and 20 frames, or 2.33 seconds, giving the ranged attack a DPS of 8.5. 5. Shatter spiders can only be found on Lunar Island. This spider has a very good melee DPS of 8.34 and an area of effect spike attack which deals a DPS of 3.33 and it has 250 health. This spider's area of effect attack won't hit other befriended spiders but will hit anything that isn't befriended like wild spiders. So bring them along for good DPS as long as all of your spiders are befriended. The nurse spider. This spider will be your secret weapon. Nurse spiders have a massive 400 health pool with a puny DPS of 3.34 but they have a special attack. Instead of attacking, this spider will perform an area of effect heal to all spiders in a 2-tile radius around itself. This heals your spiders for 150 and Weber by 8, and this ability has an 8-second cooldown. These spiders are tricky to get your hands on because they cannot be found in the world naturally. Instead, they have a chance to be spawned from a spider queen who is being attacked. So a strategy to get your hands on the nurse spider early is a strategy I first saw in Orange Man Don't Starve's video, which I then used in my Weber all boss run, which is to plant some eggs near somewhere you can revive yourself, such as a touchstone, upgrade that nest to level 3, then put anything a spider can eat in your backpack and put your backpack and items away from the touchstone, then commit tactical death. You are now a ghost and can repeatedly haunt the level 3 spider nest until it eventually spawns a spider queen. Every time you haunt a level 3 nest, you have a 10% chance to spawn a spider queen. Once she does spawn, revive yourself, pick up your items, and then befriend some spiders and command them to attack spider queen by attacking the spider queen but cancelling your animation before it connects. This will command your spiders to attack spider queen without attacking her yourself. While being attacked, spider queen has a chance to spawn some spider nurses. Feed them as soon as they spawn, then pick them up. You have now robbed loyalty spider healers. Epic. Now this spider will mostly keep your horde of spiders alive during boss fights until a massive or quick area of effect damage slams all of your spiders at once, like in Rage Dragonfly. Also, a fun portable healing station Weber can do is bring 2 nurse spiders with you and Chester, then drop the nurse spiders and tell them to attack Chester. Chester will regenerate enough health to stay alive, and every 8 seconds the spider nurses will heal Weber for 8 health per heal. Anyway, enough about nurse spiders. Lastly, we have sea strider spiders, which can be found in the waterlogged biome found in the ocean. Their nests look like little cocoons. These spiders have the unique ability to walk on water quite fast, but their walking speed on land is very slow. These spiders have 200 health and a DPS of 6.67 with their melee attack. The best use for these spiders is killing ocean enemies like Crab King as Weber, which is what I did in my Weber all boss fight. Now for a few more things about Weber that I did not mention yet. When stealing spiders from natural nests like cave spitters from cave nests, make sure you pick them up before you exit the caves, as picking them up effectively disconnects them from their nest. Otherwise, if you recruit, for example, a few spitter spiders, then go up to the overworld, then back down to the caves, the spiders will have despawned. Utilizing the parking method for your spiders, which I described earlier, is very important. Make sure to use it. Weber grows a beard over 9 days made of silk, which provides some insulation for winter, and when shaved, gives you various amounts of silk depending on the length. Weber can sleep in level 3 spider nest, which has the same effects as a tent, except it has a higher hunger drain than a tent with a lower sanity and health gain. The wiki says that going between the overworld and the caves and otherwise disconnecting from the world will make befriended spiders stop being befriended, but that's just not true. When leaving a befriended spider in the surface or caves and going to the opposite and then coming back, or even disconnecting from the world and coming back even after time has passed, the spider will still be there waiting for you, so don't start wiki back at it again being incorrect. Weber gains a small movement speed buff when walking on webbing from spider dens instead of slowing him down. Funnily enough, you can give helmets to your spiders which give them the helmet's effect. This is mostly just for fun. I wouldn't make a habit of giving your spiders helmets, as nurse spiders heal enough with a big enough health pool that they can survive most things without needing armor. Leaving switcherdoodles on the floor will mean spiders will try to eat them because they are food, so be careful. You can of course farm spiders easily as Weber, just befriend a few of them and then have them fight each other for an endless supply of monster meat, silk and spider glands. Just keep this farm away from your parked spiders, otherwise your parked spiders will join the fight. Weber's favorite food is ice cream, which heals for 0, but 25 hunger and 50 sanity. Ice cream is used for the sanity gain, so the extra hunger you get isn't very useful. Ratings time. For survivability, we're going to give Weber a solid 6.5 out of 10. His low sanity means you can dip in and out of insanity very easily, and he has easy access to spiders as allies, which are a very common mob which can overrun enemies in hordes due to the ability of being able to befriend 3 with 1 meat of some sort. Weber's utility is going to be a 6, as he can provide silk, glands, and monster meat to the team with his spider wars, along with other utility you get from utilizing spiders. And his combat is a 7 out of 10. Some of the time his spiders decimate bosses, such as Bee Queen. Other times his spiders just get destroyed, like against Deerclops. It depends on what you're fighting and what kind of spider selection you approach a boss fight with. And he has a difficulty of 4 out of 10. Weber can utilize his spiders in combat for massive DPS and even provide healing, but characters like Wolfgang are better for pure combat, as Weber's spiders can easily die, and Wendy and Abigail can farm monster meat better than Weber. Most of his perks are gimmicks and aren't particularly the best for anything, but still quite fun nonetheless. Winona is a very powerful character whose best ability is in her character-specific crafting tab, so let's start with that, as her stats are nothing special with the default 150 health, 150 hunger, and 200 sanity. First in Winona's arsenal is her trusty tape. This is a material which is required for all of her other recipes in her crafting tab, but it also has another use. It can be used the same as a sewing kit. One trusty tape is equivalent to one use of a sewing kit, so just a cheaper version of a sewing kit. Next is the main event, Winona's catapult. This structure enables an endless amount of farms of bunnies to pigs to spiders to even assisting with some boss fights, along with providing great hound defense. That is due to it firing off boulders at anything in its attack range, dealing 42.5 damage. But not only that, this damage is area of effect. The area in which it affects is 1¼ tile diameter, with a DPS of 17 for every target that it hits. Pair this up with the setup of 8 catapults surrounding either of Winona's 2 generators, and you have an immobile damage dealing machine, dishing out up to 136 DPS per target. For reference, Wilson with the Dark Sword also deals 136 damage per second, but only to a single target. But these catapults are expensive to make, are susceptible to being destroyed by giants who crush structures, and they can be targeted for attacks, as they do have a health bar, and if their health reaches 0, they fall apart and break, giving you back half the resources it took to craft them. These catapults also require power from either of the 2 structures next on the list. Winona's generator and Winona's gem-orator, both structures do the same thing, which is they power all of Winona's structures in a small radius around the generator. The difference between the generator and the gem-orator is that the generator is fueled with niter and doesn't last very long, and the gem-orator is fueled with gems and lasts significantly longer. You'll typically opt to build the gem-orator, as niter is only slowly renewable through meteor fields and acid ponds in the caves once you activate shadow rifts. But I'm not going to talk about the shadow rifts here because that's new content and I don't want to spoil anything for you dweebs. Anyway, whereas niter is hard to amass, you can quickly amass gems in your world from all the hound attacks and ruins raiding, or if you make a very cool Varg farm that I came up with an epic design which gets you up to like 30 or 40 red gems per minute, but I'll make a video on that some other time. And just so you know, a gem-orator with 3 gems in it, any gem, will power 8 catapults for 6 minutes before needing to be refueled. The last structure is Winona's spotlight. This, when powered, will point toward a player keeping a beam of light on them. This beam of light has a small light diameter of 1 tile, but a large tracking radius of 6 tiles. You probably won't be building this. Last few things for Winona are she crafts faster at the cost of hunger, which is useful for mass producing things like boards and rope. But the way this works is kind of weird. So if you haven't crafted anything in a while and then you craft something, Winona will consume some hunger if your hunger is above a certain amount. And then for the next little while, if you keep crafting items, you craft them faster like before, but it doesn't cost you extra hunger. You only get charged extra hunger if you don't craft anything for a little time and then you craft something again, at which point you then consume the hunger and you unlock the faster crafting speed for a period. And every time you craft something within that period of being able to craft things faster, it refreshes the period of which you get to craft things faster before the time runs out. So basically just try to do all of your crafting at once rather than your crafting once every few minutes. If in darkness, Winona dodges the first attack from Charlie because Winona and Charlie are, spoilers, sisters. Anyway, Winona's favorite food is spicy vegetable stinger, which is a decent sanity food which heals for 3 health, 25 hunger, and 33 sanity, or 40 hunger for Winona. Winona's survivability is going to be a 5, since dodging the first attack from Charlie is fine, I guess, but if you don't have enough hunger to craft things faster than normal, which requires you to have more than 50 hunger, Winona will instead craft things very slowly, which can catch you off guard if you're in a spot of trouble and need to craft something quickly. Utility is going to be a 7 out of 10. All her farms are absolutely game breaking in terms of resource generation, but it's expensive to set up, and usually Winona's farms aren't as impactful on long-term survival than Wickerbottom's farms. Winona's catapults are not mobile unless you build them on a boat, so if you're in combat without preparing the area you're going to fight in, she's not any better than Wilson. But with preparation, time, and resources, she can decimate bosses like Bee Queen while also destroying your ears with a bombardment of balls from her catapults. So combat is going to be a 6 out of 10. But with preparation, she could be anything from a slight DPS boost, bested by just switching to Wolfgang, or breaking the boss in the case of Bee Queen and Fuelweaver. And she's going to have a difficulty of 4.5 out of 10. Pretty decent character, but really what's going to be happening is you're going to switch to Winona, build all of her catapult farms, and then you'll switch back and never switch back to her again, unless something destroys your catapults. Wally is a very special character because he can offer the single biggest damage boosting perk in the entire game, while also being a potentially awful character to survive as due to a big downside, which is he can only eat crockpot dishes. His hunger also drains 20% faster than normal. But not only that, but Wally will remember what dishes he has eaten for 2 days or 16 minutes, and each time you eat a duplicate food inside this window, he will receive less and less nutrients from eating that food, until eventually Wally will get minimal nutrients, being 30% of maximum after the 5th time the same dish is eaten. It's worth knowing how this time window works. If you eat meatballs on day 1, then 2, then 3, you'll receive full nutrients from the first meatballs, less from the second, and even less from the third. This means each time you eat the same dish, that 2-day day count is refreshed, so you need to go 2 days without eating the dish at all to get rid of any future penalty. Meaning you can't effectively heal by chugging 10 pierogi anymore. I mean you can, but chugging 10 pierogi in 2 days will only heal Wally by 214 rather than the typical 400 health. Besides that, Wally has a big 250 hunger with a standard 150 health, 200 sanity, along with his own line of character-specific cooking structures. Chef Pouch. This is a backpack which can store any items but will reduce how fast perishable items will spoil by 1.3 times. Not as much as a fridge, which is 2 times, and it only has 6 inventory slots, whereas a normal backpack has 8. You probably won't be using this Chef Pouch except for the very early game before you get a fridge. Portable crockpot. As it sounds, it is a crockpot which you can dismantle and pick up to make it portable. Wally starts with one when he spawns in, along with a garlic and 2 potatoes. It also cooks all crockpot recipes 25% faster, but only Wally can use it. Along with this, Wally himself can make unique crockpot dishes which only he can make, and he can only make them in this portable crockpot. So now I'm going to talk about only Wally's special dishes which give special effects. So things like bone bouillon, which are unique to Wally but give no effect, I won't be talking about. Asparagus Pacho, made with 2 asparagus and 2 ice, restores 25 hunger, 10 sanity, and 3 health, which isn't a lot, but it provides this effect. Decreases perceived temperature by 40 degrees for 5 minutes. So what this means is if you are in summer and you're overheating at 80 degrees, then you eat this dish, your temperature will go down to 40. It's important to note the wording perceived temperature, because the dish will keep you 40 degrees below what your temperature is supposed to be without the dish. So if your ambient temperature goes from 80 to 50, your temperature will go from 40 to 10. Although once the season changes to say autumn or winter, your temperature won't be 40 below the ambient, it will simply match the ambient or be close to it. So the effect only fully works during the season that it was made to counter, so in this case it counters summer. This essentially means you can stockpile these dishes in a bundling wrap and eat one of them per day when you start overheating to ignore that hot ambient summer temperature. Great food if you can mass produce it. Hot dragon chili salad, made with 1 dragon fruit, 1 pepper minimum, cannot use eggs, meat or items as filler, restores 25 hunger, 10 sanity, but minus 3 health. And so you can just use 2 peppers or 2 dragon fruit, or 1 pepper, 1 dragon fruit and 2 berries to make the dish. And after eating the dish, it provides the following effect: increases perceived temperature by 40 for 5 minutes. This is essentially the same as the asparagus pacho, but for staying warm in winter. As I said, the wording perceived temperature is important, as it keeps you 40 degrees above the normal temperature during winter that you would otherwise be. So farm a bunch of dragon fruit and peppers, bundle up the fruits and vegetables, and cook them into hot dragon chili salad for your next winter. Fish cordon bleu, is that how you say it? Fish cordon bleu? Fish cordon bleu, is that how you say it? Made with 2 frog legs and 1 unit of fish, like 2 frog legs and 2 small fish meat, or 2 frog legs and 1 eel from ponds in the caves, along with 1 filler. After eating this dish, it provides the following effect: provides wetness immunity for 5 minutes. So, once you're decently wet, you can eat one of these and it will drop your wetness to 0 and keep it there for 5 minutes. You can use this during spring so you don't have to wear any rain protection, or save the dishes for when it's raining and you want to fight a boss without wearing rain protection. But why would you want to fight a boss while it's raining? Well, let's talk about the next dish. Vault Goat Chow Freud. If you know, you know. This dish requires 1 Vault Goat horn, 2 sweeteners, like 2 honey, and cannot contain meat, and you can use twigs as the final filler. After eating this dish, it provides the following effect: applies electrical damage to the player's attacks for 5 minutes. Electrical damage. What's that? We discussed it briefly earlier in the WX78 section, but now let's go over it again real quick because it's a lot more important now. Time for some math. When you deal electrical damage, your damage is multiplied by 1.5 times, so immediately you're going to be dealing 150% of your original damage, but that's not all. When your target is wet, the 1.5 times damage multiplier is changed to a massive 2.5 times damage multiplier. This means Wally eating this dish fighting a wet target out DPS's mighty Wolfgang without this dish. Woohoo! So to calculate how much damage you do with this dish, simply multiply all of your damage multipliers together. So Wally dealing normal damage using a dark sword means 68 damage, but against a wet target with this dish, he'll be slapping 170 damage per hit, or a DPS of 340, but we can still increase this a little more, which we will continue to talk about later. But for now, just know this is the most powerful standalone damage buffing ability in the game in the right circumstances. Glowberry Moose, 1 big glowberry or 2 lesser glowberries along with 1 fruit value. So just throwing 4 lesser glowberries in a crockpot farmed from the surface, reanimated skeleton will do just fine. After eating the dish, it provides the following effect. Makes the player glow for 2 days. Yep, you become a light source for 2 days. At the start, you glow about as bright as a lantern, but the closer you get to it expiring, the dimmer the light gets. This is useful for freeing up your head and hand slot while in darkness, like when you're in the caves and ruins. The Grim Galette, made with 2 nightmare fuel, 1 potato and 1 onion. After eaten, it will immediately provide this effect. Swaps your sanity and health values. If your sanity is at 0, eating the Grim Galette won't quite kill you, but wearing the bone helmet then eating it will kill you. The only effective use for this food I know of is against Celestial Champion, since during the fight your lunacy will probably be maxed out due to Celestial Champion's aura, so once your health is low, eat this dish and your health will be maxed out again with your lunacy dropping back down. That's all Wally's special effects dishes, but the special effects don't end there, no. Now we move on to Wally's portable grinding mill, which is exclusive to Wally and enables the following spice crafting menu. Each spice can be used on a crockpot dish when put in Wally's last structure called the portable seasoning station. Each spice can imbue a crockpot dish with an extra buff, 3 garlics required to grind you up 2 garlic powders. Using the garlic powder and any crockpot dish in the portable seasoning station will grant you a garlic spiced version of the crockpot dish. The garlic seasoning provides the following effect when eaten. Absorb 33% of incoming damage for 4 minutes. This effect might sound pretty nuts, but it does work similar to Wigfrid's damage absorption, in that if you're hit for 100 damage, your arm will absorb the first, so if you're wearing a football helmet, it will absorb 80 of the 100 damage. The remaining 20 damage would hit you, but the garlic spice will absorb 33% of the 20 damage, meaning you're hit for 13.4 damage. Honey crystals. Made with 3 honey and produces 2 honey crystals. Upon seasoning a dish and consuming the honey spiced dish, provides the following effect. Doubles mining, chopping, and hammering effectiveness for 4 minutes. Meaning, rather than taking 10 chops for a normal character to knock down a medium-sized tree, after consuming this, it will only take them 5 chops. Give a honey spiced dish to a Woodie and let that Woodie transform into a werebeaver, and watch the forests of the world fall as the beaver will bite down fully grown trees in 2 bites. Although Maxwell is still the superior wood gatherer overall. Seasoning salt. Made with salt crystals found by mining salt formations at cookie cutter shoals in the ocean. After seasoning a dish and eating the salt seasoned dish, provides the following effect. Increases the health value of the seasoned fish. Increases the health value of the seasoned dish by 25%. So your pierogies that would heal for 40 now heal for 50. Very cool. Probably not worth the effort going to the ocean specifically for these crystals, but if you have some spare, it means you'll need 25% less healing for each dish that you season. Finally, we have arrived at the ultimate spice, chili flakes. With 3 red peppers, you can produce 2 chili flakes. Adding this spice to a dish provides the following effect. Increased damage by 20% for 4 minutes. It also increases your temperature by 15 degrees for 15 seconds, but who cares about that? Finally, the highest DPS in the game has been unlocked. Make your Vault Goat jelly and spice it with chili flakes to not only unlock a 2.5 times damage modifier against wet enemies, but an additional 1.2 times damage modifier from the chili spice. Combine this with a dark sword and a mighty Wolfgang. Wolfgang will go from dealing 136 damage per swing to a massive 408 damage per swing or 816 DPS. That's insane. The damage goes so high because multipliers and speed multipliers in Don't Starve Together apply to each other multiplicatively, meaning they are multiplied together, not added. As such, to work out your damage, simply do this formula. This example is using a mighty Wolfgang with a dark sword. So weapon damage multiplied by all of your damage modifiers, so in this case multiplied by character damage modifier being Wolfgang, then multiplied by 2.5 being the electric damage against a wet target, then it multiplied by the 1.2 which is the chili spice, which gives us 408 damage per swing, and we attack twice per second, so 816 damage per second. This is the highest DPS you can obtain in the game with a melee weapon, but not the highest DPS in the game ever. This is the best DPS in the game. It's the exact same setup, but using blow darts, which have a base damage of 100, leading to a total DPS against a wet target of 1,200 damage per second. 600 per blow dart. That's absurd. That's a stupid amount of DPS, which can topple Beardra in 5 seconds. Crazy, but you'd have to farm blow darts with this method, so it's not too practical. But hey, maybe one day a trio run with Wally, Wickerbottom, and Wolfgang using blow darts only? Who knows? Anyway, this spice along with Vault Goat jelly is what makes Wally one of the most powerful characters in the game. Wally does not have a favorite food. Wally also cooks over campfires twice as fast as other characters, just like Willow. His personal survivability, I'm gonna rate a 4 out of 10. His foods are very useful, but he can only eat crockpot dishes, which is annoying in the early game, but not too bad since he starts with a portable crockpot to cook dishes on the go. Also, not being able to eat the same crockpot dishes more than a few times in a 2-day time span is slightly annoying, but just means you have to think a little smarter about how you're going to approach a boss fight. Wally's utility is going to be a 10 out of 10, due to his foods allowing you to effectively ignore the weather as long as you mass produce the foods beforehand, and he can provide the potential best damage boost in the game for him and his teammates. Wally's combat is tough to rank because ranking each character separately, technically Wally's the best DPS when things are wet, and when things aren't wet, he's like the third best DPS after Wolfgang and Wanda, assuming you don't count minion damage from like Weber or Wurt. But whereas Wolfgang and Wanda's DPS is always available, Wally needs to make Vault Goat Chow Freud, which is hard to mass produce early to mid game as Vault Goat horns are uncommon with a 25% drop rate, and a Vault Goat takes 2.5 days to respawn. So with one Vault Goat herd, you'd be lucky to get more than 7 horns per year, and things must be wet for maximum DPS. So we're going to rank his combat an 8.5 out of 10, and difficulty a 7 out of 10. While he can work well in solo and in a group, his recipes are incredibly powerful when you are able to mass produce them. His downside of remembering his meals is easy to ignore since food is easy to come by, and you can eat 2 meaty stews when he is starving once every 2 to 3 days. Very strong character, but does require some getting used to.
What fun to make glum by stealing one's stuff. You see, mischief and malice is a line drawn quite thin. And Wortox told Krampus this is where this one must end. But virtue gives vigor so that one might make a good tear. And though Wortox felt better to have helped on the whole, his fiendish hap was still cursed to ensnare this foul soul. So be careful what you wish for, a lesson worth mention. For taking that which is not yours can lead to possession.
Wortox hasn't been reworked, but he was changed a little bit so that, you know, he can just teleport to the other side of the map, but we'll get to that later. Wortox is a monster, and as such, some mobs will bully him, like pigmen and caccoons. Basically, all the creatures that bully Weber also assault Wortox. To help fight against the bullying, Wortox has a high 200 health, decent 175 hunger, and 150 sanity. Also, since he is familiar with monsters, he only suffers half the usual sanity drain from all mobs. But Wortox only gains half nutrition from all food, which is bad, but it's okay, because when a mob dies near Wortox, it will drop a soul, unless it's Weber, who drops 2 souls, or WX, who drops 0 souls, or a boss, which drops 7 or 8 souls. These souls will be automatically picked up as long as Wortox is close enough to them. This auto pickup range is about a 2-tile radius around Wortox. If not, then the souls will despawn after 10 seconds. Wortox can carry up to 20 souls at a time in his inventory, and nowhere else. Trying to carry more than this, Wortox will drop half his souls and lose 20 sanity, and you cannot force your souls into your backpack or onto a chest, they have to be in your inventory. Wortox can eat these souls, which provide him 25 hunger, but reduce his sanity by 5. But Wortox can also drop these souls so that they provide area of effect healing to you and your teammates, along with granting Wortox plus 2.5 sanity. Wait, area of effect healing? These characters keep getting better, I swear. How much healing do these souls heal? Well, if there is just one person benefiting from the heal, it will heal for 20 health, but for each additional person who benefits from the heal goes down by 2 to a minimum of 5 per person. So, for example, a group of 4 people who could be healed, including Wortox, will all be healed for 14 health each, providing a total heal of 56 per soul. But a group of 9 people who can be healed will only sustain a heal of 5 health each, but resulting in a total heal worth 45 health. Very good healing for you and your team, and the range of the area of effect for the heal is a 2-tile radius around Wortox. Also, note my wording when I say benefiting from the heal, in that if you drop a soul near a group of people where half of them are at full health, they don't benefit from the heal, therefore they are not accounted for in the calculation. So the healing for everyone else won't be reduced when there's someone with full health standing nearby. The souls can be used for one last thing though, teleporting. Much like the Lazy Explorer, you can right click on your screen to instantly soul hop to your mouse. After this initial soul hop teleport, you may then soul echo, which is just teleporting again, for free if you do so within the cooldown indicated on top of your remaining soul pile. Once that cooldown is up, regardless if you use the free teleport or not, your soul will then be spent for your initial teleport. Note that while in your teleporting animation, you have a few invulnerability frames, meaning you cannot be hit. Master this and you can get out of tight spots. But not only can you teleport across the screen, but if you have already visited somewhere on the map, you can open the map and teleport there using a number of souls, which scales based on how far away your destination is from your current location. This scaling is about 1 soul for up to 16 tiles, so traveling between 17 and 32 tiles away from where you are now would cost you 2 souls, but traveling 33 to 48 tiles would cost you 3 souls. This has enabled Wortox to be an insane speedrunning character. Simply set up a soul farm to easily stock up on souls such as some spider eggs, beehives, etc., and then soul hop across the map. Wortox has great synergy with Wormwood, who we'll talk about later, along with great synergy with any team as he provides healing to the entire team, unless there's Wanda, while also offering utility from his teleporting, which he can do on day 1 when he spawns in, as he starts with 6 souls. A few more things about Wortox. Souls cannot be stored anywhere except directly in Wortox's inventory, but souls can be effectively stored by carrying a stack of bees and murdering them when you need the souls. Wortox's favourite food is pomegranate. Normally when it's cooked it heals for 20 health, 12.5 hunger and 0 sanity, but Wortox takes half nutrition but then gets a hunger bonus for it, so it actually heals him for 10 health and only gives him 13.75 hunger with 0 sanity. Onto the ratings. Wortox's survivability is an 8 out of 10. He has such easy access to healing and the ability to teleport away if needed. You'll find it really hard to die as Wortox. Wortox's utility is a 7 out of 10, being able to teleport across the map to fetch items, have amazing synergy with Wormwood, and deliver items to teammates or Pearl for her quest. Most notably, if it starts raining, you can immediately teleport to her island and hand her an umbrella for one of her quests for Pearl. Wortox has no damage multiplier, but his higher than average health and his easy healing means we'll give him a humble 6.5 out of 10 for combat. And he's going to have a difficulty rating of 3 out of 10, because again, such easy access to healing. Wortox is best suited for the early or mid game, while rushing content when you have little to no resources for healing, as he has souls. But in long worlds with lots of food, resources and armor, Wortox loses his value as healing is plentiful, and more permanent ways of transportation are built, like lazy deserters and Wanda's teleportation clocks, but we'll discuss those in Wanda's section. Wortox is a very strong character that will make a great addition to basically every team. Wormwood is a plant and as such understands them, which just means these ocean plants aren't as mean to Wormwood as other players. Along with lure plants won't attack Wormwood. Predictably, Wormwood becomes depressed and loses sanity when various plants are burnt, chopped, picked in a 5-tile radius around Wormwood. Wormwood's health is not affected when eating food. That's right, this works both as a downside and an upside. Eating pierogies will only give Wormwood the hunger and sanity, not the health, but eating a red cap doesn't make you lose any health. This only applies to food though, so Wormwood can still heal from effects like items such as healing salves, jelly beans, and structures like tents. Wormwood has their own crafting tab where there are many powerful things that Wormwood can craft. Let us discuss them. First, a living log. Yep, a living log that you usually get from a tree guard. At the cost of 20 of Wormwood's health, they will produce 1 living log. This is initially risky since Wormwood struggles with healing, but if you pair Wormwood with a Wortox and a few beehives, you'll be making living logs for days and days of all of the soul healing. Bramble Husk provides 80% damage reduction with a huge durability of 525 health, and when wearing the armor and you are hit, the armor lets out a burst of thorns which deal AoE damage around the player, where it deals 22.6 damage to everything. And here's the best part, it has no cooldown, which means if you get piled by 10 spiders, they'll die far sooner to the armor's thorn damage than you will to their puny pokes. And you can easily mass produce these bramble husks if you just use a Wormwood, a Wortox, and some bees, because that's everything you need to craft them. In fact, this armor is so powerful that me and my Twitch chat paired it with WX78's electrification circuit from earlier, and we did a run where we defeated bosses without attacking them. A link in the description and card in the top right. Much like farming
living logs, throw a Wortox and a Wormwood into a field of bees and they'll be able to make you a literally infinite amounts of bramble husks. Wearing the armor while picking cactus and spiky bushes negates any damage they would have normally dealt to you, and this armor also prevents damage from the next item Wormwood can make, the Bramble Trap. This trap can be laid and will trigger upon an enemy walking close by. This trap deals less damage than a tooth trap, but the damage is area of effect. As such, upon triggering it, it will deal 40 damage in a 1 tile radius around it. It has 10 uses. Finally, the Compost Trap. Quite expensive to make, but provides 40 healing over time for Wormwood. After applying it, 8 health will heal instantly, while the remaining 32 healing is applied over 32 seconds. There are better ways and cheaper ways to heal as Wormwood, as I demonstrate in my Wormwood all boss run, but these can be a decent choice if you can mass produce the materials to make them. Wormwood shines when it comes to farming, where they don't need to till the farming turf to plant seeds. Wormwood also can plant seeds outside of farming turf, but a turf that isn't farming turf can't store nutrients, so the plants will never gain enough happiness to become giants or maybe even give you seeds. Wormwood gains 10 sanity whenever they plant any plant, including seeds. Wormwood has the ability to bloom, which happens naturally during spring, where there are 3 stages of blooming. Each stage increases your hunger drain and your speed up to 1.2 times for both, while also automatically tending to plant its crops, and bees will follow Wormwood's flower trail, so keep them away from the base. You can force blooming to happen by using items which would normally provide growth formula to farming plots, the most effective being super growth formula, made with ash, kelp and a bottle, and a little time to ferment in the ocean until it becomes super growth formula. Here's a formula to calculate how fast you can make Wormwood bloom, but all you gotta know is Wormwood blooms naturally in spring. You could force the bloom outside of spring with super growth formula, and Wormwood doesn't stay as bloomed for as long, nor does it happen as fast if it is not spring, and it will be especially slow if you try to do it in winter. Anything that would provide manure nutrients to farming plots, Wormwood can apply to themselves to get a small amount of healing over time. Seeds planted by Wormwood take longer to rot before being picked, like once they're fully grown. You can repeatedly plant and dig up something like a spiky bush to farm sanity easily, since you gain more sanity than you lose. Wormwood is immune to hostile weeds in farming plots. Wormwood's favorite food is cooked banana, healing for 3 health, 12.5 hunger and 0 sanity, but 27.5 hunger for Wormwood. Decent if you can mass produce them. On to the ratings. Wormwood survivability is a 4.5 out of 10. Initially, I thought the no healing using food would be pretty detrimental, but it's actually pretty easy to heal with other alternative healing methods. Wormwood's utility is a 10 out of 10 because being able to just make living logs and make really good armor which also deals damage back it's so insane. If you have a team and you have a Wortox, it would be a waste not to have a Wormwood on the team as well. And combat is going to be a 6 out of 10 due to mass producing good armor with thorn damage, while being particularly powerful against bosses like Bee Queen, as her Grumblebees will be dead to the husk's damage. It has a difficulty of 7 out of 10 because you can't heal. Wormwood is the best farmer in the game. They do it a bit better and a bit faster than anyone else, although every character is capable of farming giants. The fact that Wormwood cannot heal from food by eating them is a downside, which means in the early game you have to avoid combat, unless you want to spend excessive time healing with stuff like spider glands. But in the late game, Wormwood is much better at healing, as healing items are more accessible like chili beans and weapons like the Bat. A very good character for a team, but probably not the best for playing solo. Wurt is a merm, and as such she can befriend 3 merms by feeding 1 merm a vegetable, vegetarian dish, fruit, or by giving them a fish. But they don't stay befriended forever, but they will stay longer the more you feed them, up to 3 days. To be more specific, feeding them 25 hunger worth of food or giving them 1 fish means they'll follow you for 1 day. These merms are great workers as they will chop and mine for Wurt, but they don't dig up stumps or pick up resources. Wurt is sadly bullied by pigs, but at least she won't be picked on by bunnymen or frogs as they are neutral to Wurt. Wurt's default stats are 150 health, 200 hunger, and 150 sanity. I say default because the stats can be increased, but we'll talk about how later on. Wurt is also a vegetarian, so any meats or meat requiring dishes she cannot eat. She can also eat goodies being taffy, jelly beans, mushy cakes, and Volt Goat Chow Freud. While walking on marsh turf, Wurt will gain a 1.3 times speed modifier, and while you're in the swamp, you will see Wurt point out where tentacles are hiding with white indicators. Useful for not getting spanked without consent. Next is Wurt's main attraction, her structures that she can build. DIY
royalty kit. After initially placing the structure, you must then upgrade it for it to be an operational royal tapestry, using 20 kelp, 10 pigskin, and 15 beefalo wool. So pretty expensive, but you will be rewarded, as when a royal tapestry is laid down, any nearby normal merm may sit upon the throne, and then you can feed the merm with 50 value in hunger, and then the merm will transform into the merm king. Once the merm king has been spawned, all merms in the world you're in will gain 60 max health plus 10 damage, while loyal merm guards gain 460 max health and an extra 30 damage. We'll get to what a loyal merm guard is later on. Along with this, all Wurts in the world will gain a bonus to their max stats, being plus 100 max health, 50 max hunger, and 50 max sanity. Also, all merms of all types will be neutral to all creatures and players while the king is alive. Also, recruiting normal merms will be a little cheaper, costing 14.2 hunger per day rather than 25. If you have a merm king on the surface, his bonus does not extend to the caves, so if you wanted bonuses in the caves, you must build yourself a second merm king down there. Also, merms don't follow you into the caves, so you'll need to build your own merm structures down there for a cave merm army, and the merm structures we'll talk about more later. The merm king has 1000 health, regenerates 2 health per second, and if attacked, will spawn 4 loyal merm guards to defend him. The merm king can die, and if he does die, you and all of your merms will lose their maximum stat boost. His most common cause of death will be starvation, which will take him 4 days, as he starts with 50 hunger, which drains 25 per day, and then will starve to death 2 days following his hunger hitting 0. So you can feed him to keep him alive, or the cheaper option is simply elect a new king as soon as the old one dies, which means having 2 merm spawners close by to the royal tapestry to replace each other as each king dies to starvation. Merm spawners? What do you mean, Jakey? Well, merms naturally spawn from rundown houses in the swamp, but Wurt can also craft merm houses which simply spawn a single merm. Build 2 of these close to your royal tapestry and you will have infinite kings. Craft merms houses are somewhat expensive, requiring 4 boards, 3 reeds, and 2 fish to craft, and these fish are the fish you get from ponds, not the ocean, so unfortunately, Wickerbottom's fish farm can't help you here. Speaking of Wickerbottom, Wurt can read all of Wickerbottom's books for a sanity increase or decrease, but will not induce the effects of the books themselves. Here is a table showing the sanity gain or loss depending on the book that I stole from the wiki. Thanks, Don't Starve Wiki, for being correct, maybe. Also, all of these merm structures must be built on marsh turf, otherwise you cannot place them. But oddly enough, once you do place them on marsh turf, you can just dig up the marsh turf and place whatever turf you want. Next is Wurt's army, or potential army, because these are expensive as heck to make. Merm fortifications is a structure Wurt can craft with a hefty cost of 5 boards, 1 tentacle spot, and 2 spears. Each merm fortification will house 1 loyal merm guard who can be recruited like any other merm, but for 15 hunger per day or 10.3 hunger per day if the king is alive. These merms take a tiny half a day to respawn if they die, as long as the king is alive, except during winter. Merm guards' respawn behavior in winter is different than not in winter. They take 6 days to respawn, and you could burn their house to force them out of their house, but if you're going to do that, make sure to build a flingomatic. To help mass produce merm fortifications, you could trade freshwater fish to the merm king for a chance at some tentacle spots. This is going to be your primary way of farming tentacle spots: catching fish, trading, building merm fortifications, but then instead of fishing more, simply recruit some merms and make them fight each other. Upon death, each merm will drop a fish and frog legs, and if you befriended that merm with a fish, they will also drop that fish. This way, you use fish to make merms kill merms to make fish to make more merms. Make sense? Yes. While you're fishing, it's worth mentioning how pond fishing works. Each pond can have a maximum of 10 fish, and it takes 4 seconds to catch a fish from a pond, but for every fish missing from the pond, it takes you 4 additional seconds to catch another fish. So if you catch 3 fish from one pond, you'll be waiting 16 seconds for your 4th fish, and it takes 160 seconds to regenerate 1 fish in that pond. So for that reason, I'd recommend catching 3 fish from a single pond, then moving on to another one. The swamp usually has lots of ponds to fish from, but mosquitoes will harass you during dusk and night, at which point you can leave and fish from ponds in grasslands, where frogs only spawn during the daytime, and frogs are neutral to Wurt, so they won't interrupt your fishing. Now, despite all this, you can also trade ocean fish to Merm King for primarily gold and some reeds and a small chance at tentacle spots, but it's much easier to amass freshwater fish from ponds than ocean fish from the ocean, unless of course you're using Wickerbottom's farms, but you need the fish to be alive, so you need to use the strident trident to get them out of the water rather than killing them with a cannon. Now, these loyal Merm Guard soldiers kite very fast and can overwhelm most bosses, although bosses that do AoE damage will kill the loyal Merm Guards eventually, but your guards will get in some good damage before dying due to their fast kiting speed and high health while the king is alive. You can watch my Wurt all boss run for more information and see how fast Merms could decimate manipulate some bosses, but remember, since that boss run, feeding one merm will recruit a total of 3 merms. Before the changes, it was a little more expensive. Feeding one merm would only recruit the merm that you fed. Also, during my testing, I could get a group of merms to follow me for 6 to 7 days consecutively before they abandoned me. Also, if the king isn't alive, these merm guards are less powerful than normal merms, so only use them while the king's alive. And probably best to feed the king 25 hunger before you leave to fight with your merm guards, as you don't want them becoming weak due to the king dying halfway through the boss fight. Another perk of these merm guards is they are not afraid of epic screeching, like what the bee queen does. Normally, mobs like spiders and normal merms will run around and panic when an epic screech happens, but not loyal merm guards. Wurt can craft a disguise for non-Wurt players to wear so that those other players can befriend merms, and so that when the king isn't live, and therefore merms are usually aggressive, they won't be aggressive while a non-Wurt player is wearing the merm disguise. Wurt and other merms can eat durians and kelp fronds without the normal health penalty. All vegetables, fruits, and butterfly wings provide 33% extra hunger to Wurt. When Wurt holds fish meat or dead fish like spoiled fish, she loses 4.4 sanity per minute. But keeping an alive fish in Wurt's inventory allows her to gain 3.3 sanity per minute, but this effect does not stack. Fish held by Wurt will stay alive for longer, suffocating at a rate of 0.25 times, allowing ocean fish to survive 4 days before dying, but that's not including any seasonal spoilage modifiers. There are 2 prominent ocean fish which Wurt can utilize for their effects for extended periods before putting the fish into a tin fishing bin, which will restore its health. Those being Ice Bream acts as a cooling source of 5, which is enough to stay cool during summer, allowing you to ignore summer heat while holding the fish. And before the fish dies, simply put it in a tin fishing bin and grab a different fish of the same type. This fish can only be found during winter in the Swell Ocean, and you can catch them using a sea fishing rod and a sunrise spinnerbait during daytime. Other lures do work too though. As you will be using this fish during summer, it will spoil faster than normal, so it will survive for just over 3 days before needing to be put back in the tin fishing bin. Scorching Sunfish acts as a heat source of 70, which is enough to stay warm during winter, allowing you to ignore winter cold and getting cold from being wet. And once again, when it's going to die, store it in a tin fishing bin and grab a different Scorching Sunfish. Be careful, this fish on the floor is so hot that it can ignite nearby items. As you'll be using this fish in winter, it will spoil even slower, so it will last around 5 days before you must put it back in a tin fishing bin. These fish ultimately replace a thermal stone for Wurt, as they last a lot longer than a normal thermal stone before needing to be swapped out. Wurt cannot trade with the Pig King. Wurt also suffers no effects from being wet apart from the temperature loss, which can be ignored by using the Scorching Sunfish. As such, Wurt won't drop items from being too wet, unlike other characters. Wurt won't lose sanity from holding wet items, and Wurt doesn't drop items due to the Moose Goose honking attack or Bearger's swiping attacks that normally make you drop your weapon. Wurt's favorite food is durian and restores 48.25 hunger from eating one. Decent, but if you're farming for hunger food, you'll probably be farming for pumpkins. Wurt's survivability is a 7 out of 10. Not having access to meat dishes is not so good, but gaining 33% extra hunger from everything you eat is great. And farming is one of the best sources of food in the game, so you won't have a hard time surviving as Wurt, along with her massive boosted stats second only to WX if they have all the health circuits. Wurt can get a ton of seeds from training with the Merm King, also being very good at gathering wood and rocks using her merms, so her utility is going to be a 7 out of 10. Combat is a 5 out of 10 except when she has an army of merms backing up, which will take you at least half a year to set up, but once it is set up, they can single-handedly take out bosses like Bee Queen and Dragonfly. Loyal merm guards are one of the strongest minions in the game, so her combat overall will be an 8 out of 10, with a difficulty of 4 out of 10. Wurt is very much a mid to late game character to spam her loyal merm guards to kill bosses very fast, but this costs a lot of resources, but it is very fun to play with an army of merms. I'd recommend Wurt for any player who likes the minion playstyle. Walter is a child explorer and cub scout. He starts with a slingshot, some ammo, an epic hat, which we will talk about later, and a dog, which you can pet, so instantly S tier character. Otherwise, Walter has 130 health, 110 hunger, 200 sanity. Pretty low stats, but he is a child, so it makes sense, kind of. Walter's sanity might look decent, but he is also fearless, which is good. This means Walter does not get affected by negative sanity auras from creatures like Deerclops or Fuelweaver and like the Darkness. But in exchange for this, whenever Walter sustains damage from anything, he will lose
sanity equal to double the amount of damage he took, which is quite the downside. You either need to not get hit or bring tons of sanity food. Along with sanity food, you may want to bring Walter's hat that he starts with and can craft, as when wearing it, it reduces the sanity drain effect when hit by half. So being hit for 100 damage will reduce your sanity by 100 rather than 200. It also provides +2 sanity per minute while wearing it. Not that you'll notice, because Walter also does not get affected by clothing sanity effects. That includes his own hat, items like the Tam O'Shanter, but also includes negative auras from clothes like the spider hat. Although this does not extend to nightmare gear such as Dark Sword and Knight Armor. Your sanity will still be affected from this shadow-like gear, like still gaining the positive sanity aura from the full sight body. Walter has a long list of random and unintuitive perks and downsides which I will now go over. Walter does not lose sanity when jumping through wormholes or when your teammates have died and have become ghosts. Walter will kick over a fire twice as quickly as other characters, the same as Willow and Wally, taking half a second rather than 1 second. Walter loses half the amount of hunger when sleeping compared to other characters. Walter will restore 6 sanity per minute and receives half the usual sanity drain from losing health when there are more than 5 trees within a 2.5 tile radius around him. Yeah, he's meant to be a Boy Scout, so he's more comfortable around trees. This perk is so weirdly specific and not even good. Anyway, if you want to gain sanity in-game but lose sanity in real life, while it's nighttime and there's a campfire, Walter can tell stories at the campfire or endothermic fire by right-clicking the fire. This will generate an in-game sanity aura of +10 per minute while destroying your ears in real life as you listen to minutes of water automaton noises. Walter takes an extra 10 damage when hit by any bee creature. This damage ignores armor. So being hit by a regular bee while Walter wears a football helmet, he'll lose 10 health from this effect, plus the regular damage from being hit, and suffering the resulting sanity loss. Walter can craft a portable tent which has 10 uses. Walter will continuously lose sanity while his health is not at 100%, scaling up to -12 sanity per minute proportionally to his missing health. This effect is halved while wearing his special Pine Tree Pioneer hat. Walter has an unkillable pet dog called Woodie, with 9 inventory slots that follows Walter around similar to Chester. Woodie can be transformed into a rideable dog similar to a beefalo by feeding it monster meat. Wodie's speed in this form scales off of hunger until she reverts back to a normal dog. She has 50 hunger. Walter cannot attack while riding Big Woodie except with his slingshot. If Walter is hit for 10 damage to his health, so after damage reduction, in a small time frame while riding Woodie will buck Walter off, and then run a short distance away. During this bucking animation, you will not be forced out of the animation from taking more hits, so you may sustain lethal damage from the long animation. Now we have Walter's main perk, his slingshot, one of the few cheap ranged weapons in the game. Unfortunately, the DPS of the slingshot is just bad. Like really bad. Like, if Walter couldn't use a melee weapon, I would have to increase Wes's combat rating, as Wes's DPS with the Dark Sword is higher than Walter's slingshot DPS, even when using the best ammo. Speaking of which, Walter can craft various pellets for his slingshot. Most just deal damage, but some pellets have an effect. Crafting any and all ammo gives you 10 rounds per craft, so let's go over them. Pebbles. These deal 17 damage when shot and requires rocks to craft. Gold rounds. These deal 34 damage and, unsurprisingly, require gold to craft at a science machine. Marble rounds deal 51 damage and require marble at an alchemy engine. Freeze rounds. These deal no damage but freeze the target. One shot of a freeze round is equivalent to 2 hits from an ice staff and requires moon rocks and blue gems to craft at a prestidigitator. Slowdown rounds deal 17 damage and reduce the target speed by 1/3 for 30 seconds and requires moon rock and a purple gem at a shadow manipulator. Poop pellets will cause non-boss mobs to de-aggro from wherever they're attacking when they were hit. These require manure at a science machine. Cursed rounds. These are the rounds you're gonna be making. They deal 51 damage with a 50% chance to spawn a shadow tentacle when the round hits its target. These shadow tentacles can deal 34 damage per hit and can hit twice, after which they will stick around for a short time, but they don't attack again. These rounds require Thulsite fragments and a nightmare fuel at a pseudo-science station. Finally, Walter can also load melty marbles into his slingshot for 59.5 damage. That might sound good, but these don't stack and cannot be crafted. Instead, they can be found as a rare trinket from graves, tumbleweeds, and the ruins. So the best ammo you'll be using is cursed rounds. Now let's test the DPS of these rounds in an ideal situation, which is you can constantly shoot without moving and your target is not moving so that the shadow tentacles will actually hit their target. This scenario is not very realistic, but against some bosses and with a team it can happen. So Walter's slingshot attacks once per second, so deals 51 raw damage from hitting the enemy with cursed rounds, plus a 50% chance of spawning a tentacle which can deal 34 damage twice if both of the attacks land. So 51 plus 68 multiplied by 50% because they only spawn half the time equals 85 DPS. 85. Wes's DPS with the Dark Sword is 102. So the slingshot is worse than Wes with a dark sword. Epic. Walter's slingshot is best seen as a utility tool to fire out his special rounds and opportunistically used as a range weapon when you cannot fight in melee distance, as it fires 2 times slower than a normal weapon and therefore results in low DPS. Though in an ideal situation, firing cursed rounds at a stationary enemy, assuming that every shadow tentacle hits, which it probably won't if the enemy moves, but that will give you 85 DPS, which is the exact same DPS as Walter swinging Wigfrid's battle spear continuously. Though just to be thorough, I tested killing Phase 3 Celestial Champion with 4 characters, Wanda, Wolfgang, Walter, and Willow. Wanda used her alarming clock as Elder Wanda, and Wolfgang and Willow used the same gear and resources with a dark sword, while Walter used exclusively his slingshot with cursed rounds. Which character's kill time do you think came in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th? Just give yourself a little guess. Remember, Walter's theoretical damage is 62.5% of Willow's theoretical DPS with a dark sword, and Walter's DPS is only 31.25% of Wolfgang's theoretical DPS. Here's the results. Wanda came in first, unsurprisingly, with a kill time of 1 minute 50, so her actual DPS was 127.2. We'll talk about why Wanda is so good in Wanda's section. Let's move on to Wolfgang. Wolfgang came in second at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, so with an actual DPS of 87.5. And then, who do we think came in third? Walter or Willow? Surprisingly, Walter actually came in third with 4 minutes and 3 seconds kill time, with an actual DPS of 57.6. Then Willow came in fourth and took 40 seconds longer than Walter to kill Celestial Champion Phase 3, with 4 minutes 43 seconds kill time, with a DPS of 49.4. So from these results, you can see that despite Walter having less theoretical DPS than Willow, since he didn't have to do any kiting or chasing of Phase 3 Celestial Champion, he ended up killing it faster, meaning his actual DPS was higher than Willow. Now, Celestial Champion Phase 3 is probably the worst boss for a melee character and the best for a character with some range, since it moves around a lot and you must dodge its attacks. Whereas Walter only had to do 1 step to avoid laser attacks, otherwise he could just hold F. This is a rare scenario for Walter and doesn't transfer well to other bosses like Dragonfly. Walter's slingshot is a cheap way to kill birds for feathers without Wickerbottom's feather farm. Walter's favourite food is trail mix, which is a cheap healing food restoring 30 health, 12.5 hunger, and 5 sanity, but restoring 27.5 hunger for Walter. Mostly a healing food, so not too useful as a favourite food. Now, I haven't done a boss run with Walter yet, so maybe my opinion will change after that, but for now, his ratings are as follows. Survivability 3.5 out of 10. Whenever Walter joins my server, I sigh, because they get hit, they go insane, and then they die. Even if you can deal with being insane easily, there's no upside to playing Walter for that reason of going insane, as other characters do better against shadow creatures, if not the same. Utility is a 5.5 out of 10. He can use Woodie to have more inventory space, scout the world slightly faster in the early game by riding Woodie, and offer some utility with his slingshot rounds with effects, but it isn't that much. His probable best use for a very beginner team is reading around the campfire for everyone to gain sanity, but even then, it's only 10 sanity per minute. Combat is a 4.5 out of 10. The best DPS you can do from Walter is by not using his range equipment, at which point he's a default damage dealer with less max health and loses tons of sanity when he gets hit, which means he'll be fighting shadow creatures more often or having to take extra prep time to gather sanity food. If you decide to use his slingshot instead, then you won't go insane since you have distance between you and your enemy, but you will still be dealing half of the DPS of a normal character with a dark sword. So if you did dedicate yourself to Walter's range playstyle, you would have the lowest DPS in the game, therefore his combat would be a 1 out of 10. But since he can use melee weapons, I was arguing with the chat, we were going anywhere from 1 out of 10 to 5 out of 10, but we settled on 4.5 out of 10, so this combat rating is really up for discussion. I was happy to put it lower, since theoretically, Walter's kit has the lowest DPS in the game of any character. But anyway, his difficulty is a 6 out of 10 due to the low max health and easily going insane. I don't see a use case for Walter except for Wobie's big form for moving shadow pieces or truly dedicating yourself to the ranger playstyle in a big team so that you don't take damage. Overall, I just wouldn't recommend Walter, unless of course you just enjoy playing him. Wanda is an incredibly unique and powerful character, but will punish you greatly if you're a noob. Let's start with her stats. Wanda has 175 hunger, 200 sanity, and wait, where's her health? Instead of health, Wanda has an age meter. This age meter indicates Wanda's age, obviously. Her youngest age possible is 20 and her eldest is 80. But once she hits 80, she dies, as will we all. Now, when Wanda takes damage, the damage is taken from her age with a ratio of 2.5 damage, taking away 1 age. This means starting at age 20, you can take 149 damage, which will take your age up to 79, close to 80, before dying after taking 150 damage, which means you reached age 80. So effectively, she has 150 health. But not only does damage get subtracted from her age, but Wanda will naturally age at a rate of 1 age every 40 seconds, or 3 age every 2 minutes. To reduce Wanda's age, you must use her special clock, which she starts with 1 of. This clock is called the Ageless Watch, and it reduces Wanda's age by 8, and has a cooldown of 2 minutes. And nope, you cannot use healing food to decrease Wanda's age. Eating healing food won't decrease your age, but eating food that damages you will increase your age as expected. Over a 2-minute period with 1 clock and naturally aging, you can net heal by 5 age with 1 clock every 2 minutes, assuming that you don't take damage. 5 age is equivalent to 12.5 damage, so with 1 clock, you can only sustain 12.5 damage per 2 minutes while staying the same average age, just as a point of reference. Wanda has an interesting mechanic with her ageless clock, which is, when she uses it, it stops her aging clock meter from ticking forward and then begins turning the clock back, which has some positive and negative side effects. The positive being, if you're at high age, which is the equivalent to low health, and you're dealt a lethal blow, if you're quick enough, you can effectively cancel a portion of the damage by using your ageless watch to stop your age ticking forward, and then it will start reversing it by 8 age. This means Wanda can effectively tank infinite damage with correct timing. For example, here's 10 level 3 Shadow Knights, each of them deal 150 damage each, which is enough to kill Wanda 10 times over. But when Wanda sustains damage, her age will tick up at a maximum acceleration rate, meaning you have a short window to negate that 1500 damage and get your 8 age heal in, as you can see. It's rare that you'll be able to utilize this mechanic, but it is worth noting in case you are ever able to. Now, the negative is that if you use your ageless watch and your age begins reversing, but then you take damage from anything, it cancels your ageless watch's reversal of your age, and then the damage is applied. This is why Wanda's biggest enemy is freezing and overheating, since this will constantly damage you slowly, and this means that if you try to heal using an ageless watch while freezing or overheating, your heal will be cancelled and you will continue taking damage, and your ageless watch is now on cooldown. Anyway, that's enough about Wanda's aging mechanics. Let's talk about all of her other abilities which make her powerful. You may have noticed Wanda has 3 looks depending on her age. Age 35 or less is young Wanda, age 36 to 64 is middle-aged Wanda, and age 65 or older is elder Wanda. She crafts and works a little slow when she's elderly, but more importantly, Wanda deals more damage with shadow weapons the older age range she's in. She gets a 1.2 times damage multiplier if middle-aged, or a 1.75 times damage multiplier if she's elderly with shadow weapons. And she has a very own shadow weapon that she can craft, and it is the best in the slot for her, the alarming clock. The alarming clock can be crafted with timepieces, which we will talk about later, but for now, know that you start with enough timepieces to make your weapon, also needing 4 marble and 8 nightmare fuel. This alarming clock has a base damage of 81.6 and counts as a whip weapon, which has 2 interesting details which make this weapon different from a regular weapon like a handbat. Firstly, range. Wanda's weapon has an attack range of 1 tile, so you can be 1 tile away and still hit the enemy, whereas other weapons like handbats have a range of half tile. In gameplay, this is very noticeable and helpful as you can attack enemies before they even try to attack you, and sometimes the range is enough to break bosses like Celestial Champion Phase 3. But the other detail is not so good. Wanda's weapon being a whip means it attacks at a very slightly slower rate than a normal weapon. Any character with a handbat will attack pretty much exactly 2 times per second. I will quickly say though, that a while ago you used to be able to attack a little faster than twice per second due to lag, but they have since fixed this. Now you almost always attack at attack rate of 2 times per second with only a few frame deviation. Wanda's weapon on the other hand attacks at about 1.875 times per second. During testing, her attacks would take anywhere from 31 to 36 frames, but the majority of her attacks took 32 frames, so we'll calculate it as 1 attack every 32 frames, aka 1.875 times attacks per second. The weapon, like I said, has a base damage of 81.6, but counts as a shadow weapon, so Wanda's damage modifiers get applied. So middle-aged Wanda will hit 97.92 damage per hit with it, and elder Wanda will deal a whopping 142.8 damage per hit, and the weapon has 100 uses and can be refueled by 25% 100% with one piece of nightmare fuel. You've probably picked up Wanda's role so far, a glass cannon, which is she does more damage the closer she is to death. So let's talk about that. When playing Elder Wanda, her DPS without any external buffs is 267.75, which is only 4.25 DPS less than Mighty Wolfgang with a Dark Sword. So she's a very good damage dealer. Assuming that you want the best DPS Wanda can offer, then you would always be staying age 65 or older to do maximum damage. But this also leaves you very vulnerable. Luckily, Don't Starve Together has a very easily accessible and high damage reduction armor, being Night Armor, which offers 95% damage reduction. Marble Armor also gives 95% damage reduction, but it slows your movement speed. Using 3 Papyrus of 5 Nightmare Fuel at a Shadow Manipulator, you can craft this 95% damage reduction armor with 525 durability. This will be your go-to armor along with the Dreadstone Helmet for Wanda. The Dreadstone Helmet only has 90% damage reduction, and while wearing it with Night Armor, it won't make you take more or less damage than wearing only the Night Armor, but it will keep lowering your sanity while it's being worn, so you have more Nightmare Fuel to fuel your weapon, along with its durability regeneration over time. But the main reason for pairing this helmet with the Night Armor is since the helmet will take some of the durability loss away from the Night Armor when you take damage and apply it to the Dreadstone Helmet, which basically just extends the lifespan of your Night Armor. Also, when Wanda is elderly, she's more in sync with Shadow equipment, and as such will receive no sanity drain from the passive sanity drain from Dreadstone Armor or Night Armor. This doesn't fully apply to the effect of Nightmare Armor though, since usually when you get hit while wearing Night Armor, it takes away your sanity based on 10% of the damage you receive to your health and your armor combined. So if Dragonfly hit you for 75 damage while wearing the Night Armor, you will lose 7.5 sanity. But this effect is reduced on Wanda, so in this instance I only lost about 2.5 sanity from taking a hit from Dragonfly. Anyway, the amount of damage Wanda can safely take while being elderly while using the Night Armor's 95% damage reduction can be calculated. But firstly, if we want to always stay elderly for maximum damage, we need to be age 65 or over. But when can we heal? Well, the Ageless Watch heals us by 8 age, so the earliest we want to heal is once we hit age 73, which would take us back to age 65. Okay, so the oldest we should ever be is age 73, which leaves us with less than 7 age before dying, which is equivalent to 17.5 health. So we cannot take 17.5 damage without dying while at age 73. So let's see how much damage that is through Night Armor. Night Armor reduces damage by 95%, so simply do 17.5 health divided by 1 minus the damage reduction, so 95%, equals 350 damage. So we would have to take 350 damage at age 73 while wearing Night Armor for us to die. Now you understand, you're incredibly safe while hiding inside your Night Armor. Less than 300 damage is equivalent to these scenarios. Now that's not even everything Wanda has to offer. We have explored her combat and damage dealing capabilities, but now we will discuss her teleporting capabilities along with everything she can craft in her character specific crafting menu, Clockmaker's Tools. Wanda can craft this and it allows Wanda to dismantle any clocks that are not on cooldown to retrieve 100% of the parts it took to make them. This is useful for when you decide you don't want a clock anymore, or another purpose with one of Wanda's teleporting clocks that we'll talk about later. Timepieces. These can be crafted with 8 Thulsite fragments and 2 Nightmare Fuel, while also holding your Clockmaker tools. These are an essential ingredient for Wanda, as all of her clocks require timepieces in various amounts to craft. This means a very effective strategy for early game for Wanda is to rush either the ruins or the archives, or both, then make or find yourself Thulsite walls, place them, and hammer them. This will grant you lots of Thulsite fragments, which you will need to craft all of your clocks. Ageless Watch. This is the watch which you start with 1 of, but you can make more for extra healing. It heals you for 8 age with a 2-minute cooldown, but to be clear, the cooldown for all of Wanda's watches is per instance of each watch, and not a global cooldown for every clock of that type. It requires 1 timepiece, 2 marble, and 1 red gem to craft. Second Chance Watch. This watch requires a timepiece, 2 living logs, and 4 bone shards to make. Its effect is Wanda can use this watch on a dead teammate to revive them, but not like a Telltale Heart. The watch won't revive the ghost on the spot. Instead, it will teleport the ghost back to where they died and play a special revival animation to revive them back where they died, as if time had reversed for them. So make sure wherever they died is safe to revive them, else they'll just be dying again. The clock has a 4-minute cooldown. Its other use is if Wanda dies, she will drop this clock if she's holding it. Normally Wanda doesn't drop any of her clocks where she dies, except for this one. Then Wanda can haunt the clock to revive herself. Utilizing the clock this way will break it and return half the materials needed to make it. So overall, this clock is a very cheap way to revive your teammates, but perhaps it's best to rely on your teammates to revive Wanda without a health penalty with the Telltale Heart, so that Wanda doesn't have to break her own revival clock. Backstep Watch. This watch requires a timepiece and 2 gold. Upon activating it, it will teleport Wanda a small distance back where she was previously with a 2-second cooldown. cooldown. With this teleport, you have invulnerability frames, so with precise timing, you can dodge attacks from most 1v1 scenarios, and the cooldown is short enough so you can iframe most bosses with good timing. The watch determines where it will teleport you by teleporting you back to where you were a few walking actions before the teleport. The amount of walking actions decreases with the older age stages, teleporting you long distances as young Wanda, medium distance as middle-aged Wanda, and short distances as elder Wanda. But not only that, you can manipulate how this watch works by stacking your walking actions up like this. Walking back and forth in 2 spots will stack previous walking actions to these 2 spots repeatedly, so stacking in the watch this way means you won't awkwardly teleport far away from the boss you're trying to fight. If you want to learn more about this watch, watch my all boss Wanda speedrun to see the strategies in action. Backtrack watch. This watch requires 2 timepieces, 2 gold, and 1 Mac Tusk to craft. Yes, the thing that has a 50% chance to drop from the Mac Tusk that only spawns in winter. Upon crafting, you can right click the watch to anchor it to the point in the world where you are standing. As long as you can stand in a spot, this watch can anchor to that spot. Once the watch is anchored to a spot, right clicking it again will teleport you to that anchored spot from anywhere. Whether you're on the other side of the map or in the caves, it will take you back to the anchored spot. This enables you to build an insane network of teleports and teleporting hubs all across, above, and below the world. Each backtrack watch has a cooldown of 8 minutes, but of course this cooldown is for each individual watch, so you can have multiple watches with different cooldowns. Using a purple gem on the watch will temporarily transform it to a rift watch, which will have the same anchor point as the watch used to craft the rift watch. Upon using the rift watch, rather than teleporting Wanda to the destination, it will instead open a portal to the destination, which anyone can jump through for a short period. Useful for jumping through with something that's heavy, like a shadow piece, a statue piece, set piece. Yes, wow. Upon the portal opening, the purple gem in the rift watch breaks and it reverts back to the normal backtrack watch, but it still keeps its anchor point the watch had set previously. So with enough of these watches, you can build a central teleport hub which teleports you everywhere. How I would recommend you utilize these watches are: set your first watch to your base. That way, wherever you are in the world, you could just instantly teleport back to your base if you get into trouble, or if you'd rather not walk back to your base to save time. Upon arriving at your base, you can have a second watch which is also anchored to your base and swap out your watch that is now on cooldown with the other watch which takes you to your base too but is not on cooldown. As you get more and more backtrack watches, you can start building your network of teleports. I'd recommend you watch my short Wanda megabase tour in my ultimate base video if you want to know the details of a Wanda teleporting network, but here's a few brief tips. Have watches that teleport you to your teleporting hub in your base. Always have one of these watches in your inventory. At this teleport hub is where you will store all of your teleports across the surface map. You should store these teleports in chests with items indicating where each teleport will teleport you by placing the item above the teleport watch in a chest or a scaled chest. If a teleport watch is in a chest, you could teleport with it directly from inside the chest without taking it out by opening the chest and right clicking the teleport watch directly. Have a teleport to the caves at your surface hub which teleports you to a caves hub. Upon teleporting to the caves hub, store your overworld hub teleport and swap it out for a caves hub teleport. Your cave hub should have teleports across the caves like Ancient Guardian, the ruins of Fuelweaver. Upon wanting to leave the caves, teleport back to your cave hub and swap your cave hub teleport with your overworld hub teleport, and then use your overworld hub teleport. And that was a crash course in watch teleportation that was with Wanda. Very cool, goodness gracious. And if you ever wanted to change the teleportation spot of a backtrack watch, simply use your clockmaker's tools to dismantle the watch while it isn't on cooldown, and then craft the watch again. Now you can anchor it to a different location at no cost. Set up some beefalo, pigs, and bunnymen around each Mactus hut to help kill them once every 2.5 days. Although Mactus only respawn off screen, so you need to wait 2.5 days, after which the next time the Walrus camp is off screen or it unloads is when Mactus will actually respawn. Wanda's favorite food is taffy, which is pretty useful as it's pretty cheap and easy to mass produce, but it can be used as your main source of hunger restoration if you have a honey farm. It restores 0 age, 40 hunger, and 15 sanity for Wanda. Wanda is a punishing character without good planning and skill, but with both of these, she will be the most powerful character you can use in a mid to long term world. Having access to almost as high DPS as Wolfgang is only one of the great things about Wanda. Once accounting for her range with her weapon, she may out DPS Wolfgang in some situations, but that depends on lots of things which change depending on what you're killing, but I won't be deep diving into the specific boss fights. You can watch my Wanda boss run instead. In my Wanda boss run, I never used crockpot foods and instead chugged raw meat and cooked monster meat for hunger, while also lowering my sanity and sometimes intentionally eating monster meat to cause damage so that I can become elderly Wanda for the best damage. Wanda's teleports in the long term could save you an immense amount of time, but since they require Mac Tusks, there is a hard limit of how many you can acquire per year, which is 4 Mac Tusks, which respawn up to 5-6 times in one winter, so up to 24 Mac Tusks with a 50% drop rate of the Tusk, so 12 Tusks on average per winter. So to amass a lot of these teleports, you want to be playing at least for a few years in a world. Wanda does require a small amount of setup time to get her weapon, which will use all of your timepieces that you start with, and it requires a shadow manipulator, which means you'll either have to dig graves and hope for a red and blue gem, or rush the ruins, which you'll probably be doing anyway for the Thulsite fragments. A safer but less rewarding way to get Thulsite fragments is simply finding the archives and bringing 3 gold pickaxe and 3 hammers with you. Then hammer the Thulsite walls for fragments while mining the statues for moonrock and Thulsite blocks. I did a test clearing of an archives, and it took me 12 minutes to clean the whole archives, and it gave me 144 Thulsite fragments, 32 Thulsite, and 33 moonrock. And it was completely safe. 144 fragments is enough for 18 timepieces. More if I crafted Thulsite walls from the Thulsite and then hammered the walls for fragments. Wanda's survivability is going to be a 3.5 out of 10. As to do more damage, she needs to effectively have less health than Wes, which would have dropped her survivability to 1 since it's the lowest health in the game. But with the use of her clocks and good armor, this risk is mostly mitigated and avoided. So I think 3.5 is fine. This score also drastically depends on your skill level, with it being lower the less experienced you are, and it going higher if you choose to only play as middle-aged Wanda rather than elder Wanda. Wanda's utility is going to be a 10 out of 10. Being able to teleport your team repeatedly with only a slightly expensive setup cost is very nice in a mid to late game world, but you won't be able to achieve this super fast, as most tusks will go towards walking canes for your team before going toward excess backtrack watches. Although in a solo world, this is the character I would play if I were going to make a mega base. Wanda's combat is going to be a 10 out of 10. Her theoretical DPS is a tiny bit less than Wolfgang with a dark sword, and she can't tank as much damage as Wolfgang, nor can she heal as fast, but the range on her weapon and her damage is just so insane, along with her cheap clock that gives her invulnerability frames, and the sound of her weapon is so satisfying that she's going to be tied with Wolfgang. And of course, Wanda's difficulty is going to be a 10 out of 10, from the complexity of her age mechanics, her watches, the fact that for maximum DPS, you have to be really, basically low health. If she's going to have a combat rating of 10 out of 10, it assumes you're playing as elderly Wanda, which means you have low health. So, difficulty, 10 out of 10. She's the hardest character to play in the game. Wanda is a very strong character, and I don't really have a lot more to say about her, which I haven't said already. In long-term world, I would almost always pick Wanda. Now, we have not reached the end of the video despite reviewing all the characters. That's because next is the very epic Excel chart I made on my stream with my Twitch chat over multiple streams, about 10 or so hours. So before we reveal all of the characters' rankings together and compare them, remember that this is mostly my opinion. We also discussed with my Twitch chat to influence some ratings for some characters based on their experience with the characters. Also, these ratings are taking into account both solo worlds and team worlds, so I'd say these ratings are pretty accurate. But here we go. The overall ratings for every character is their survivability, utility, and combat added together, and it gives us this total ranking. Wolfgang and Wanda are tied for first place, Wigfrid coming in at second, with all the heavy utility characters like Wickerbottom, Maxwell, and Woodie close behind, followed again by still powerful creature characters being Wurt, Wortox, and Wormwood, then slightly weaker combat characters like Wendy, Weber, and WX, and finally followed by the characters who are just painful to play. In case you can't quite tell how to read this chart, each column belongs to a character. That column has 3 bars which represent survivability, utility, and combat for that character, with a difficulty rating. Then above the column is the survivor's head with their total ranking above it. This helps visualize their total score in comparison to the rest while showing all of the data points. You may also notice we have a character called Winston in this chart, who is a character me and the Twitch chat made up to help draw a comparison between characters. Winston is basically Wilson but with no skill tree and no beard, so has no downsides, and thus Winston isn't good at anything but isn't bad at anything either, so he gets a rating of 5 for all categories. Now, changing the chart to be sorted by survivability, we'll see Wigfrid mains rejoice because Wigfrid is in first place, followed by Wortox, then Wolfgang, along with the rest of the survivors. Notably, Wanda is almost at the bottom of the survivability chart. Tragic, but I think this is accurate. Sorting by utility, you have all the high utility characters tying for first, with a 3-point difference between them and the next runner-up being Wortox, Wurt, and Winona. Wigfrid also coming in high up with her songs, and then the utility begins dropping off with Wes all the way at the bottom. Now, ordered by combat, Wanda and Wolfgang are tied first, with Wally and his spicy Voltgoat jelly coming in second, with Maxwell in a close third, tying with Wurt and her loyal Merms. Weber offering slightly weaker minions coming in after them, and notably, Wigfrid coming in about halfway down the list, since she only does 25% more damage. And we have a tribute to her health and sanity healing towards survivability, hence her high survivability rating. And lastly, here is the chart ordered by difficulty. So the most difficult characters to play on the left, while the easiest ones are on the right. Wanda is at the very tippy top, as she has the lowest operational max health, and the complications with her watches making her complicated to survive as. Wes being second, as he's the challenge character who's bad at everything, followed by Wally, Wormwood, and Maxwell. Then it begins evening out with characters who are average difficulty until we cut to Wortox, Wendy, and finally Wigfrid being the easiest character to play. Here's the chart ordered by total ratings again. Do you agree with my ratings? My ratings are my personal opinion and from my experiences with the characters, so take these ratings with a grain of salt because you simply might enjoy one character's playstyle more or less than me. So your ratings might be different, but I think this is a pretty decent idea of the power level for each character. I went into lots of detail about all the characters in this video, but if you want even more detail about each character, you can watch the all boss speedruns on my channel for each character. I didn't do Walter, Willow, Winona, and Wes yet, but I will will over the coming months. Check the description for many resources and videos that I mentioned in this video, along with any changes that happened or anything that I missed. Thank you to my Twitch chat who tortured me and tested my patience while we were testing various mechanics for the information in this video, and I probably missed a few small things for some characters, so be sure to let me know in the comments what I missed so others can see. Thanks to the Don't Starve Together wiki for being correct some of the time, and thank you for watching the video! This video has taken a Word document with a script of over 35,000 words to write over a few weeks, plus a document of 7,000 words containing shots needed for the video, along with many streams and hours testing mechanics that even the Don't Starve wiki got wrong or just didn't mention. And of course, gathering all the clips by myself and with my Twitch community took a long time. So thank you for watching, and thank you for helping if you did help, I appreciate it. And the biggest thank you to Clay for making the game and all of the character animations that I used parts of as in the intros for each character. I have a lot of video ideas at the moment, but I will keep them a secret for now, except for the next video, which will probably be a new Wolfgang speedrun because of the new Nightmare Werepig boss introduced with the Wilson rework update. And perhaps a video describing the best character team combinations that don't starve together. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you for watching once again. I greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe and like and comment, and thank you to Manscaped for giving me money, and I am leaving now. Go watch all my videos and come back soon. Okay, bye-bye.